Hello, hello, welcome. Here we are. My name is Preston Jacobs. We're talking about some ice and fire. We're whatever. We're doing whatever. Tonight, let's talk about Blackfyres. Um, One of the big questions that everyone has is young Griff a Blackfyre? Um, Now, spoiler alert, I'm not going to be able to give you a definitive answer at the end of this, but hopefully I will present some stuff that will illuminate um, the ideas on things and make you see it in a way that you haven't seen it before. Um, I want to talk about, first of all, George's writing process. George over the years to get to the point where, finally in A Dance with Dragons, we meet Aegon for the first time. So this goes back, and you say, okay, is Aegon a Blackfyre? Well, Aegon being a Blackfyre is part of a larger kind of story. It's part of this eventual clash between Daenerys and Aegon that we know is going to happen at some point. And we know that from pretty close to the beginning, not the very beginning, but pretty close in the beginning, we have the original outline of A Game of Thrones. That this was October of 1993. George R. R. Martin wrote this rough outline of where he thought the story was going for his editor. And in this outline, he states that essentially the story will come in three phases. The first phase being the War of the Five Kings. The second phase being the Daenerys Dothraki invasion, and the third phase being the Others invasion. I believe he calls it. While the line of the Lannisters and the direwolves of Stark snarl and scrap, however, a second great threat takes shape across the narrow sea, where the Dothraki horse lords mass their barbarian horde for a great invasion of the Seven Kingdoms, led by the fierce and beautiful Daenerys Stormborn, the last of the Targaryen dragon lords. The Dothraki invasion will be the central story of the second volume, A Dance with Dragons. Now, so from the beginning, he does change this later. Like, A Dance with Dragons does not include the invasion. But right from the beginning, he kind of thinks A Dance with Dragons, the Daenerys invasion will be A Dance with Dragons. Whether that's dragon versus dragon, we're not quite sure, but it kind of sounds like it, A Dance with Dragons. Because a bunch of dragons on a one-sided battle attacking stuff is not really very much of a dance. When you think of A Dance with Dragons, you think two dragons dancing in pairs. I mean, yes, like technically speaking, you can dance alone. Technically speaking, you can have a line dance or whatever. But when we say a dance, let's dance, we usually mean opponent. So right from the beginning, there is a subtle hint that we will have a dragon versus dragon battle. That is the situation, A Dance with Dragons, as part of the Daenerys invasion. And it's pretty remarkable that this early, right from the beginning, he had that idea that there might be dragon on dragon fighting right in the beginning. Now, also in A Game of Thrones, and this doesn't come until the end of A Game of Thrones, we get the description of Aegon. And the description of Aegon that Ned gives in A Game of Thrones is a red ruin. Well, actually, he gives. I know he gives a description in Eddard 15, but here actually in Eddard 4, relatively early, we have a. Let me show this. Hold on a second. Is it this Search of Ice and Fire that? No, it's not that one. I'm sorry, I've brought up the wrong. There it is. So right here, he remembered Rhaegar's infant son, the red ruin of his skull, and the way the king had turned away. So right from the beginning, we have an unrecognizable corpse, or we have the hints of an unrecognizable corpse. And we have this idea of Daenerys fighting another foe, possibly with a dragon, right from the beginning. So that's pretty interesting. Now, the identity of this opponent, I mean, the opponent being Aegon of some is interesting that it's so early. But then we get this other additional thing. And this comes with, I'm talking about Bright Flame, the Bright Flame line. So after A Game of Thrones is published, we then get the Hedge Knight. And in the Hedge Knight, we're introduced to Aerion Brightflame. And around the same time as this is written, George R. R. Martin writes the beginning of A Clash of Kings, where he introduces the idea that Aerion Brightflame and Daeron the Drunkard had children that were passed over. And Aerion Brightflame's child specifically is passed over for pretty lame reasons. That like, oh well, Aerion Brightflame was crazy, and so therefore like his line is exempt. And it's like, well, Daenerys's dad was crazy, like, you know. So it's right from the from the beginning of A Clash of Kings. So now we're talking about that outline was 93, and so now we're in 96 is the Hedge Knight. And so we're introduced to this idea that there is another Targaryen line that is still out there. And of course, when we get to the end of A Dance with Dragons, we're introduced to the Cloth Dragon, which Daenerys specifically calls the Mummer's Dragon. A Clash of Kings is published in 98. So what I'd say here is, and let me see, let's put I'm gonna do a little brief outline here. Hold on a second here. So we'll say that in 93, we just have this idea that there's an opponent of some sort, an opponent with dragon. But we're also introduced to the idea of Aegon as an unrecognizable corpse. I'll put that. Aegon unrecognized. Okay. And then with the Hedge Knight and the Clash of Kings, we get essentially the Bright Flame idea. That there's all these bright flames out there. Or perhaps a Daeron the Drunkard or whatever with his mentally challenged. Let's put a year on that. We'll say this is like 96 to 98. It's the Bright Flame idea. Now, keep in mind, at this point of the story, there's absolutely no concept of things like Bloodraven, Bittersteel, Blackfyres, Golden Company. None of that exists, okay? And so it's pretty clear that around in 96 to 98, it seems like George was playing with the idea that the line of Aerion Brightflame would be perhaps the rival Targaryen that Dany was fighting against, that would be fighting against, perhaps posing. But here's the contradiction, of course. You can't be Aegon and a Bright Flame simultaneously, okay? Aegon is clearly the child of Rhaegar. Bright Flame is somebody else. So the idea of there being a cloth dragon, a mummer's dragon, someone pretending, one Targaryen pretending to be a different Targaryen, fairly early concept that we've been introduced to the idea that Aegon is not dead right from the beginning. And then we get a rival claimant and the idea that they are a mummer very early. Now, I would say everything changes in the year 2000. Okay. George is writing A Storm of Swords. And I will say, based on the drafts, so there's 1999 drafts of A Storm of Swords that G. Steph found at the Cushing Library. That has no references to Blackfyres, because there's no references to Blackfyres in the first half of a Storm of Swords. But all of a sudden, around early 2000s, somewhere around there something happens. George figures something out. And there's a number of So Spake Martins from around this period where people ask him questions and he kind of just volunteers information. So let's see here. Here we go. So June, I think there's something in May here. I want to be bastards. No, okay. So May 2000. Somebody's like, "Oh, I was just wondering." This question is given to him, and he's like, let's get down to the Blackfyre part. No, I'm sorry. This one's about the Golden Company. So somebody's asking him a random question. I have just a wee little question that I hope you can help me work out. If not, that's fine. I realize you're a busy man. In your series of Song of Ice and Fire, what's the difference between a sellsword and a free rider? Okay. This guy's asking completely different question. He's not asking anything related to Aegon, the Golden Company, any of these sort of usurpers. And he's just like, oh, sellswords are mercenaries and they may or may not be mounted. Most tend to be experienced. It's profession, that's it. So George answers this. And then he's like, all out of the blue, he's like, oh yeah, and you get more sellswords on the eastern side of the Narrow Sea than in Westeros. The free cities have heavy use of mercenaries for centuries. You meet two sellsword companies. You'll meet two sellsword companies in the Storm of Swords, the Stormcrows and the Second Sons. And there are others. The Golden Company is the largest and most famous, founded by one of Aegon the Unworthy's bastards. You won't meet them until A Dance with Dragons. Free riders, it's... George just this is how different the world was back then. Okay, this is the year 2000. This guy asks a random question about the difference between sellswords and free riders. And George all of a sudden is like, let me tell you about the Golden fucking Company. It's outrageous, but it's very clear that George was excited about these ideas and is just volunteering this fucking information. So all of a sudden the Golden Company, first time we hear about it, May 2000. This is before Storm of Swords is published. And then, let's see, here is this, is this where I'm going to get Blackfyre? Yeah. This guy asks, he starts talking about the Targaryen bastards and that they're given specific different names over the years. And he brings up Daemon Blackfyre for the first time. And we get a very specific background for Daemon Blackfyre. Stuff that's not given in A Storm of Swords to this detail at all. And he's just talking about this in fan correspondence. Blackfyre is a specific branch descended from Daemon Blackfyre, the bastard son of Aegon the Unworthy and his 3 sisters imprisoned in the Maiden Vault. Blackfyre was the name of the Aegon Conqueror's great sword. Some felt the sword symbolized the monarchy. We're getting this huge, elaborate backstory on the Blackfyres. And then we also get someone asking this specific question, which is important. I don't know if you've given this any thought, but the Westeros realm, have they ever been invaded from the east? There have been a few attempts to claim the Stepstones, that changes the large island of the Narrow Sea, east and Dorne. After the death of Targaryen dragons, did the lords ever rebel against their kings? Yes, there have been rebellions, most notably the Blackfyre Pretenders. Okay, June of... So, this was all middle of 2000. It was very clear that he had come up with the Blackfyres around this time and was very excited about talking about them. Now, after that, and there is a question, the August 2000 question, which is really important. Is someone asked this in the year 2000. Not that it wasn't already implied with an unrecognizable corpse, okay? But it gets very explicit right here. And that is Tom R. asks in August of 2000, I was wondering, I have a teeny tiny question. Are Aegon and Rhaenys, alias children, well and truly dead? Apparently he read the book and was like, unrecognizable corpse, come on, are they truly dead? And George says, all I have to say is there is absolutely no doubt that little Princess Rhaenys was dragged from beneath her father's bed and slain. So George pretty much gives away the game here and says that there's going to be an Aegon returning. Now, keep in mind, this is happening at the same time. Like the Aegon returning and Blackfyres as a concept is coming at the same time. And then, in about 2000, Storm of Swords is published in 2001. We get mentions of Daemon Blackfyre, the Blackfyre Pretenders, Maelys the Monstrous. He commissions some work in 2001, and he gives a fairly detailed history of oh, no, that's actually later. Never mind. But nonetheless, it's this is all before even Storm of Sword, the Sworn Sword, comes out. So let's talk about. Let's do an overlay timeline here. So I'm gonna say 2000 is really the birth of the Blackfyres as a concept. Now, certainly Daemon Blackfyre is birthed around there. It's not necessarily true that Bittersteel and Bloodraven don't come around, and the Redgrass Field don't come around until 2003. So we have this idea of a first opponent, and then we have this idea of the Bright Flames. Birth of the Blackfyre idea is in 2000, but that's mainly like Daemon and the Golden Company is that. And then we get in 2003, that's when we really get Bittersteel, Bloodraven. This comes with the Sworn Sword. Bittersteel, Bloodraven. And you can also check like drafts of, at this point, A Dance with Dragons and A Feast for Crows were one and the same. But all of those early chapters of the Dornish story where they're talking about the Golden Company breaking their contract and talking about Bittersteel and Darian bringing up Bloodraven and stuff like that. That's all the same period of time. We're talking late 2003. I think the drafts that we got from the Cushing Library are October 2003. And then someone asked this incredible question in November of 2003. They asked, hi, short question. Will we find out more about the Dance of the Dragons in future books? And he says, the first dance or the second? The second will be the subject of the book. The first will be mentioned from time to time, I'm sure. Of course, later the first Dance of the Dragons becomes the fucking Fire and Blood, and it's now a fucking TV show. So it's funny that he goes from, like, back in 2003, he had no concept of ever exploring the first Dance of the Dragons. But it's very clear that, like, at this point, because at this point, like, the book was going to be called, the fourth book was going to be called The Dance with Dragons, and it was going to be the subject of a book, you know. So, I mean, I think he was thinking this was back when, what, 5 year? No, I guess he'd abandoned the 5 year gap at this point, but maybe he's going to then make it the next. Oh, because he's thinking that A Feast for Crows is going to be the whole book, and then Dance with Dragons would be the Daenerys invasion. So yeah, so Bittersteel, Bloodraven, and of course we get confirmation that, I mean, this is all in the same period of time, like within months of each other. He's inventing Bittersteel, Bloodraven, and he's talking about the second Dance of the Dragons, which we kind of knew from the very beginning that the Dance of the Dragons would be a bout between these two Targaryens. And of course, Feast for Crows was published in 2005. Now, I will say that those early drafts of A Dance with Dragons, A Feast for Crows, also, Tyrion 3, the chapter, is rather significant because Tyrion 3 is the chapter where we're introduced to young Griff. And in a previous version of that, we get a very, very detailed backstory of Meleys the Monstrous. Meleys the Monstrous, this was deleted from the published version, but it's very, very detailed, goes on for pages and pages about how Meleys the Monstrous sacrificed his son to wake stone dragons, and it was just deleted. And so some people think that even that Tyrion 1 mention of, like, oh, the Blackfyre male line is dead is too obvious. And so imagine how obvious everything would have been in Tyrion 3, where we get this huge backstory on Meleys the Monstrous while being introduced to Aegon, you know. So overall, what I'm saying is, when we're going through this evolution, is that it's very clear from the beginning that there was going to be a battle between Daenerys and another dragon rider. It seemed like George was leaving open, at least with the unrecognizable corpse of Aegon, that he was leaving open the idea that this unrecognizable corpse was going to be Aegon. Then it seemed to evolve into, okay, well, let's make that unrecognizable, let's make that opponent a bright flame, but it'll be a trick, it'll be a mummer, and that'll be the conflict. He'll be pretending to be Aegon, but it'll really be Bright Flame. And I think it's, in my personal opinion, it seems that the Bright Flame idea was dropped and replaced with a Blackfyre idea. That he got this huge idea about the Golden Company and Daemon Blackfyre and bastard legitimization. Keep in mind, A Storm of Swords is where bastard legitimization becomes a thing. It's not even a thing in a Game of Thrones and a Clash of Kings. It's introduced in A Storm of Swords so Jon can be presented with this option by Stannis. That's it. And John mentions, I mean, Rob mentions it at his will, but I think that mentioning of the will is just so later, like it's introduced to the story and doesn't come out of nowhere for John. So I think George was thinking about bastard legitimization and stuff like that, and comes up with the Blackfyre idea because he was already thinking about the Stannis offering the legitimization to John. And then he gets into more details with Bittersteel and Bloodraven in 2003 and stuff like that. Now, the question is like, okay, so is Preston saying Aegon is a Blackfyre? Well, I'm not quite going that far, but what I am saying is that clearly we're supposed to suspect it. Clearly, the idea of this opponent facing Dany was being thought of and being presented hand in hand with the Blackfyre stuff. I mean, Aegon leading the Golden Company by itself is kind of already that, you know, like even if you eliminate all the other fucking shit from the story, like the Meleys the Monster stories and stuff like that, and you just introduce the idea that Aegon is leading the Golden Company, like just on that by itself is already kind of suspicious. Now, in the end, will Aegon actually be a Blackfyre? Or are we just we're only supposed to suspect it? I don't know. You know, maybe people will think he's a Blackfyre and it turns out he's legitimate. I mean, and that's the double fake out. I don't know. But going through the history of how George structured the story and when information was introduced, it's pretty clear to me that Dany was always going to have an opponent. And that opponent was probably always going to be Aegon. We had an unrecognizable corpse and a dragon rider opponent from the beginning. I think George toyed with the idea that it was going to be a descendant of Aryan Brightflame. And then after exploring the legitimization of bastards, he invented the Blackfyres and then went into detail with the Bittersteel Bloodraven stuff and the complexities of all of that. And that was the evolution. But I think these ideas were always coupled together. I mean, Aegon was introduced in the same chapter as a long description of Meleys the Monstrous. Like, it's very clear that these two things go together. And, you know, it's either a fake out or, yeah, Aegon's a Blackfyre. I don't think it, now, some people are like, oh, could he be both a Blackfyre and a Bright Flame? No, I think George probably just dropped the Bright Flame plot. I think he probably at one point explored that and then didn't go with it and went on. And yeah, that's it. Anyway, I hope that was at least interesting, and you know, people thought that was interesting and learned something. I don't know, but when you go through George's writing process, it's rather clear that the Daenerys Dance with Dragons is coupled with Blackfyre. And previously Bright Flame. All right, let's go into it. Aegon the Unwelcomed. By the way, these early super chats, they always get out of order. But anyway, is Dornish law a setup for a Westerosi Magna Carta at the end of the story? Its adoption, probably in the final few chapters, seems like a good ending. You know, that's a good question. I think personally that makes that makes a good story, and that Dornish law should be incorporated that way. I don't know, you know, how much George planned and then dropped and things like that. I mean, from the very beginning, from the appendix of a Game of Thrones, we are introduced to the idea that Dornish law, at least on a minimum level, has women inherit equally to men. But in A Feast for Crows, Aegon has this idea of Dornish law comes back in A Storm of Swords with Oberyn, and then comes back with the Sand Snakes and Aegon. And it always did puzzle me that there is this huge book of Dornish law in Aegon's tower. And it's like, there has to be more to Dornish law. And so we hear vaguely in Fire and Blood and The World of Ice and Fire that maybe there's some stuff about charity and not beating wives and, you know, things like that that's involved with Dornish law. But, you know, not too much has been explored. We're you know, these are snippets, very little, few snippets on Dornish law and what could be in there. So I think it would be nice. I mean, I certainly in the fanfic plan on having the implementation of Dornish law, and I feel that's an important part of the story. But I don't know if like George does introduce stuff and then drop them. So that's certainly a possibility that, you know, he introduced the concept of Dornish law, and besides the failed Myrcella plot, it was irrelevant. And I suppose the Aegon Quentin rivalry is relevant, but you know, so it would be nice. It would be nice, or at least, you know, in an epilogue or something that's explored. But I mean, I agree with you. I just don't know if like George was kind of planning on that. Certainly in the show, we we're not introduced to any of that. We just get like the concept of a great council to elect new kings, and that's it. That's like a step in the right direction. Are the Blackfyres actually Dana the Defiant's heirs? Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's what Dana and Aegon the Unworthy. The other way is the one that's in question. Some people think that Daeron is actually a bastard from Aemon the Dragon Knight. So I don't know if anybody questions Daemon Blackfyre's like legitimacy. I mean, but yeah, I mean, Dana should have inherited. She's the only person that the Council of 101 like passed over. Essentially, she's the only female that was like, nope. I mean, besides, you know, well, actually, no. I mean, like besides Rhaenyra, but not really Rhaenyra. I'm in Hobart, Tasmania. My next door neighbor has a lemon tree in his front yard, which during winter was covered in lemons. Lemon Gate debunked. No, I've been presented this a few times that there are different types of lemon trees that might grow in colder environments, and that a certain degree of frost, you know, a lemon tree can tolerate, and things like that. But of course, like the truth on the ground with regards to facts is not really relevant. What's relevant is like what George believes and is what is in the story. So certainly in the story, regardless of what like happens in real life, in the story, the characters don't think lemons can grow that far north. Like Sharma the innkeep laughs at Angai the archer when he mentions lemons in the Riverlands. The other guard laughs at Raph the Sweetling when he talks about citrus fruits being in Bravos. They have to ship in the Vale. They have to ship the lemons up from Dorne. Like we're very fairly certain over and over again that there's no lemon trees in Bravos. And someone specifically asked George, like, is this significant that lemons don't grow in Bravos, and yet Dany remembers a lemon tree? And George replied, Yes, it's significant, but if I say any more, it would be telling. So like obvious, like I would say Lemongate is as close to fact as possible. Like just based on the fact that like people fucking asked George point blank about it. Um, and that it's gotten a lot of attention. I mean, it was in fucking House of the Dragon. I mean, House of the Dragon has at least like recognized it. I mean, granted, that's not George, but um, there's something there. There's something to do with the lemon tree. There's something about the House of the Red Door not really being in Bravos. Something significant and something much more interesting than it being a fucking greenhouse of the Sea Lord of Bravos bullshit. Like there's something interesting there. But I understand that real life doesn't fucking matter. Real life. I mean, what you gonna do? Human beings cannot survive. The Targaryen line couldn't survive that much incest. There's no way that there would be Targaryens around with that much incest. And if they were, they wouldn't be as hot as Dany. So there's a lot of like, they would have a Habsburg jaw or something, like there's real life, at some point you do. I mean, George does try to make things scientifically accurate and stuff like that, but also let's be ridiculous. Let's be honest here. Okay. A thought hit me last night regarding the Unsullied. Dany must be paying them now, right? So how much per week do you think they make? Also loving Pluribus so far. Reyes Sweethorn is the GOAT. Pluribus is fantastic. George and Carmen and I did a very brief podcast on it. Maybe post that soon. Pluribus is fucking great. I'm really, really excited about where it's going. I haven't felt this excited about like a show and where it's going in a while. I mean, I guess I was pretty excited about Alien Earth, and that didn't go anywhere. But Carmine and I were discussing this, how like not since Westworld and what was the other, and Raised by Wolves, have we been like, oh my god, I gotta see the next episode. It's fucking fantastic. But the Unsullied are being paid. Absolutely, they're being paid. 100% there being paid. I mean, the evidence of this is that they have money to go to sex workers. So if they weren't getting paid, they wouldn't have money to go to sex workers. So absolutely, they're getting paid. How much per week do you think they make? I mean, economics in George R. R. Martin's world is all over the place. It's really tough to figure out how much people make. I mean, obviously they're not big. They're not getting starved. They're getting a fistful of coppers. A fistful of coppers. A silver stag. There's been analysis of people trying to figure out how much things cost, and in Ice and Fire, there's no rhyme and reason to it. So I mean, obviously Dany's able to do it. I mean, she can sell a lot of riches and things like that. So, I mean, they're getting something. They're buying something. I guess there's what there's supposed to be 8,000 Unsullied. I think there's 8,000 Unsullied, and then like 3,000 kind of disappear in the story. But that's actually an interesting kind of idea here. How many Unsullied quit because they didn't think the pay was the right level? Because here's the fucking thing, okay? When you have a regular job, right? There's a supply and demand for labor. And the supply of labor and the demand for labor like shift until you get a price, like with any good. And so there must be a point like where, I mean, it may be that Daenerys is overpaying them. She's paying way over market, and therefore all 8,000 Unsullied are like, fucking great deal, and stay. But you'd think some people would quit, like like, no, I'm gonna travel the world. I want to go home. I don't want to fucking be here. Like I want to immediately go home to the Dothraki Sea, to Nath, to wherever. I mean, granted, I understand that there's religious implications on like them worshiping or Danny and things like that, but a certain like getting paid a price, like there would be a certain number of people where that job is not worth their time and they would quit. So Danny shouldn't have all of her Unsullied. There should be a certain number of people who don't think the pay is worth it and leave. Um, which may explain where the 8,000 went. Like because I think she leaves Astapor with 8,000 Unsullied, but in the Winds of Winter sample chapters, there's only 5,000 Unsullied left. So maybe some like she chose a price, and thousands were like, "Fuck no, I'm out of here," you know. But that's an interesting. It's one of these things that I'm sure George wasn't thinking about or anybody's ever thinking about. Like what like why are they sticking around? How much money is she offering to keep them sticking around? You know, things like that. Um, PJ, are there hints of him being a Blackfyre, but it's too obvious? What will this epithet be in the future after unworthy, unlikely, unknown, unsure? That's funny. Aegon the unsure. Aegon the uncertain. Um, I mean, I do think that the idea is that perhaps it's too obvious. Like the male line thing is so fucking clunky. Um, everybody thinks that one is clunky. You know what I'm talking about? Like Tyrion 2. Black or red, a dragon is still a dragon. When Meleus the monstrous died upon the stepstones, it was the end of the male line of House Blackfyre. You know, like it's just so obvious, right? Um and so but at the same time, you know, clearly he deleted all, like George deleted all of the Tyrion 3 stuff on Meleus the Monstrous's backstory. So even though that makes it really obvious, it's amazing how super obvious it was, and he cranks it back to only obvious, you know. Um, but yeah, does the nature of it being too obvious make me think there's more to it? Yes, you know, absolutely. But you know, um, which is kind of why I always had the position of like they're gonna tell people whatever, and they'll believe it. Certain people are gonna get told it's Rhaegar's son, and certain people are gonna be told he's a Blackfyre and stuff like that. So, and different rumors will be going around, but it's the male line thing is just. Hmm. I mean, Jesus. Like, there's other lines later where people are like, as to the Starks, the house is extinguished only in the male line. Eddard, the daughters still live. Like, you're just like, oh my god. Like, can you make this? Can you make it more obvious? Which makes me think maybe he's actually Aegon from the beginning, and it's a fake out. So I don't know. I don't know. Aegon is an obvious Stark. Um, I bet that we get wins this year before betting Aegon is a Targaryen. That Fagon is a Targaryen. Well, the thing is, I mean, obviously we're absolutely not getting wins this year because there's not enough time. Um, you need at least a 4 or 5 months like lead on like the book is done to like editing and printing and all that. So you know, so but we'll probably never find out. if Aegon is a Targaryen. That's the real truth of it. Is we'll never get it. Gonna get it. But I don't know. I think it's kind of funny. I mean, I do think it's somewhat ironic if it were that Dany is the fake one, and and Aegon's the real one. That's kind of funny in the end. Like oh man, that's um didn't that's the switch, right? Yeah, Blackfyre's bright flames, nettles, surviving dragon scenes, everything. High towers. There's a bunch of high tower daughters that had kids with Targaryens. Like, you could throw a rock. There's fucking Targaryens everywhere. It's just ridiculous. So, um, yeah, the bright flame line is the firmest evidence that Aegon is prepared Targaryen. Because, I mean, it is true that it's very clear that there was this pretender thing before with the bright flame idea, and then he's like moving it, shifting it over. Um, somebody's bringing up like Mummer's dragon could just mean like Varys's dragon. That's all true, but at the same time, they're always called the Blackfyre pretenders. They're always called the Blackfyre pretenders, and it's like, like now obviously like Dany is the one that says Mummer's dragon. Like she just sees a cloth dragon. Cloth dragon could be anything. I mean, but she's sitting there going Mummer's dragon. So it may be that she has the idea in her crazy head that he's a Blackfyre pretender or a bright flame, and in truth, he really is Aegon. Because it seems like everybody around him seems to fucking believe he's Aegon. I mean, everybody seems to believe he's the son of Rhaegar. Jon Con, Varys alone with his little birds. Like, it seems like they think he's actually Aegon. So maybe it's just in Dany's mind, like, no, I'm the only true Targaryen. You're not a true Targaryen, Did the outline predate Phyllis convincing him dragons? No, Phyllis convinced him even before that. So the thing that was a little different at that point is that the dragon eggs were found outside the Dothraki Sea, in the Dothraki Sea. And I mean, there's a few other things that Dany is very angry at Khal Drogo and kills him in revenge for murdering her brother and things like that, rather than like loving Khal Drogo and having the Miri Maz Dor stuff. But yeah, no, the Phyllis Eisenstein stuff. I'm not sure at what point. Like, I imagine it's somewhere in that period of time where he writes the 13 chapters in 1991. Sometime during the Doorways period, the two-year Doorways period, where he stops working to work on Doorways, and then comes back to it for that outline in 93. So somewhere in that window is when she convinces him to put the dragons in, between 91 and 93. I agree, Gecko. How on earth is Euron going to beat the Hightower and Redwyne fleets? Is really going to be able to just pull Krakens out of the sea? Also, who is the most unfairly hated character in all of A Song of Ice and Fire? No, I mean, I truly do believe that, like, my Battle of Blood idea is more or less how things are going to go down. I mean, he's been collecting all of this blood. He's like, okay, summarizing the evidence, we've got like the contemporary Aegon chapter where she's at House Toland, and and the Maester talks about the Krakens in the Straits and how blood brings them to the surface. So we know that like Krakens are attracted to blood. And meanwhile, we see in the Forsaken chapter that the characters have been hung upside down and butchered, which is what you do when you're draining their blood. And they talk about and the characters talk about feeding bodies to the sea, sacrificing them to the sea. So you're doing the same, we're specifically told that krakens are attracted to blood. And then we're told that the characters are getting drained of their blood and that they've been getting thrown in the sea as sacrifices. So I am fully convinced the chumming of water thing is what's going on. That he's chumming the water, hoping to bring krakens in to cause some sort of, chaos. Now, what exactly he's doing with the krakens and how he's going to survive, how Aegon is going to survive, all of that is uncertain. But it does seem that he's just I think the chumming of the water thing is pretty clear, at least in my mind. Plus, we have all the visions of the fucking Red Sea in front of the three towers and all of that. Melisandre has the visions of the three towers by the sea, and Makoro has the vision of the blood sea and the krakens, and Aegon has the visions of the blood sea and the krakens. So blood in the water is just there. So this idea that there needs to be dark magic or something it doesn't need it. We're pretty much told about the chumming of the water, the chumming when you put all these things together. So that's what's going to happen now. I think that I think it's the idea of being in the Whispering Sound and trapping them and stuff like that is a pretty good idea. Pulling a Fair Isle and stuff like that. But it's I got the Battle of Blood video, but I think that's more or less how it's going to go down. I wrote about it. We wrote about it in the fanfic with the Harrower chapter and stuff like that. So, who's the most unfairly hated character in A Song of Ice and Fire? I think Catelyn and Sansa are, well, I think Catelyn is the most unfairly hated character. Sansa, you're supposed to hate. Sansa's supposed to be an idiot because she's representing the classic I love fantasy thing, and then you're supposed to turn around and like her. But it's very clear that George was setting up Sansa to be an enemy, that was making her purposely dumb, purposely self-centered. That's very certain in those early Sansa chapters. So yeah, she's supposed to be hated, and then she just doesn't do anything for 2 books. Clash of Kings and A Storm of Swords. The fucking Dantos plot goes on forever. And then I think people start loving Sansa once the end of Storm of Swords and A Feast for Crows happens. But Catelyn is absolutely the most unfairly hated character. Everybody hyper analyzes the kidnapping of Tyrion and blames everything on her, ignoring all the other fucking shit that other characters are doing that have led to war. And that, the kidnapping Tyrion was a bad idea, and the worst thing is that she didn't immediately tell her father, Hoster Tully, about it. And instead went on the road and went up to her sister. She could have sent somebody to warn them and stuff like that. But man, the Ned Stark stuff, Ned Stark is 10 times the idiot and 10 times as maddening as Catelyn. And yet people love Ned. People fucking love Ned. The show became this worship of him. And it's just not fair. Ned's insanity in A Game of Thrones. There's so much insanity. He knows that Catelyn has kidnapped Tyrion, and he quits the small council with no consideration of it. What the fuck are you doing, dude? Your wife kidnapped Tyrion. Do you think it's a good time to fucking quit the small council? the madness that he had of like, having mercy for Cersei and Joffrey, and then not having mercy for Cersei and Joffrey, and not sending a letter to Stannis, and not telling Robert, and all this. Like, you're just like, what are you doing, bro? Yet Catelyn, her one bad move is just amped up so far, um, or a lot of little things like Catelyn is mean to Jon. Yeah, she's totally mean to Jon. But like Ned bringing a child to an execution, Ned executing somebody unjustly and bringing a child to that unjust execution, like gets a pass all the time. And so it's quite obvious that the hatred of Catelyn and to a lesser degree Sansa is sexism. And the pass that we give to idiots like Ned, is from sexism. Like, obviously, fucking obviously, but, thoughts on Bronn wearing no pants when he's fighting Ser Vardis? Look up. Bronn was so lightly armored. Let me see this. This is, Oh, Bronn was so lightly armored he almost looked naked beside the knight. He wore only a shirt of black oiled ringmail over his boiled leather, a round steel half helmet with a nose guard, and a mail coif. High leather boots with steel shin guards gave some protection to his legs, and discs of black iron were sewn into his fingers of his gloves. Yet Catelyn noted that the sellsword stood half a hand taller than his foe with a longer reach, and Bronn was 15 years younger. I'm gonna bring this up. Yeah, yeah, there it is. You're right that, like, okay. So you're saying there's no description of I'm like trying to puzzle out, like, granted, even if I'm assuming that he's wearing pants, like, how dumb he is from not having any armor and how that would be exploited immediately. I mean, is the idea that the ringmail is like falling down over his like groin and thighs? He wore only a shirt of ringmail over the boiled leather, a brown steel half helm with a nose guard and a mail coif. Leather boots, steel shin guards. Nothing on his. I mean, assuming, like, even assuming, like, I mean, maybe he's just, I mean, it's funny to think that he's just fucking not okay, like his dick's hanging out. But even if he is wearing pants, and I think the implication is where he's wearing pants, like, why Ser Vardis just didn't go straight for his thigh is just ridiculous. That should have been a straight up win right there. But yeah, his yeah, it's funnier to think that he's just rocking, rocking out with his cock out. Oh. Hmm. Hmm. Oh, ridiculous. 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 Reading all this George R. R. Martin correspondence is surreal. Such innocent, hopeful times. Yeah, he was super open back then. Oh my god, I was this old when I realized that Bright Flame and Blackfyre are kind of close. I'm so dumb. Yeah, I mean, some people even combine them for a theory. There's the bright fire theory or something. But what's funny is that they call him Aryan Bright Fire and Aryan Bright Flame interchangeably. Um, so it's but yeah, they're both pretty close. Um, at the time of the outline, only other planned Targaryen was John. George R. R. Martin probably abandoned the idea of getting John his own dragon early in the writing. Hmm. I'm trying to think about because John. He somehow get him the John, like get John a dragon, and that Danny would be fighting John. Because keep in mind that like at the time of the outline, there was no John Danny romance. The romance was going to be John Arya romance, and the Tyrion John rivalry was over Arya. And it's very clear that later on, the Arya John romance was abandoned and replaced with the John Daenerys romance, and so the rivalry between John and Tyrion over Dany could be maintained. Um, it's definitely shifting plot element kind of later because you think about like the original outline has Tyrion being exiled north of the Wall, where he runs into all the Starks and everything, versus being exiled to the east. Um, but I mean, there's still this. I mean, the thing is, there's still this idea fairly early on of like of, I mean, of Aegon's corpse being unrecognizable. So, I mean, three dragons, three eggs, three dragons, that kind of stuff is all there. So, um, I don't know. Is John gonna get his own dragon? I mean, the show had him get a dragon, so I don't know. It's hard to say. Logistically, it's very difficult to say like why would this dragon be given. I mean, I guess they do it like they do in the show, just hand the dragon. Um, Sweet Robin was only sickly because Lysa's milk was bad. Imagine if he started getting stronger now that he's feeding from her, not feeding from her anymore. I mean, obviously this is a joke, but I'm trying to think of like, could that be no? Because so as someone who's had kids and knows about like how nursing goes, it's rather clear that like as the kid gets older, he starts eating more for nutrition. He starts eating solids, but the there's still a comfort aspect to the breastfeeding. So you'll the transition usually happens where like okay the kid just wants to feed before going to bed. That's a very common one is, oh, I want my kid to go to sleep. Well, I'll just breastfeed him and then he'll fall asleep because that's very comforting and relaxing for him. Things like that. Or if the kid is upset or having a meltdown, you can placate the child by giving them the breastfeeding. But like as for like all of their nutrition coming from the breastfeeding, no, they'll eat other stuff to feed it. So like, you know, unless there's some sort of like, you think there's some sort of poison. I mean, I think there was a theory that perhaps Lysa was on some sort of drug, and then he was like Sweet Robin was getting the drug through the breast milk and getting infected or something like that. I mean, interesting and all, but Lysa was always overly protective of Sweet Robin, so I don't think she would have had that oversight. She kind of knows that if she was doing something bad to her body, she probably wouldn't pass it on to him, be reckless enough like that. But I think I've definitely read some people that are like, oh, maybe there's sweet sleep, and that Lysa was using sweet sleep and it passed through into her breast milk and things like that. But yeah. I mean, this is the question of like, how much stronger is he getting? I don't know. There hasn't been that many chapters. Like, the Elaine story has so few chapters that we don't really know where Sweet Robin is going. Is he that much stronger? So I don't know. Oh, will Aegon actually accomplish anything aside from deleting the Martell line? Uh, hmm. So there's I mean it depends what you define as like accomplish. Like I do think that most of the South at least will like eventually declare for Aegon, and then Daenerys has to like work her way in and fight against him. Um, will he accomplish anything? Will he make reforms? I don't know if there's much time in the story anymore. There was George's original plan was it to be, keep in mind that Arya is what is Arya's what 10 years old when the story begins. I'm gonna check on this, which is very. Let's see. This is the kind of funny thing about it. Okay, Arya is born in 289, so the story begins. She's 9 years old. So George from the beginning had this idea that there was going to be this passionate romance between Jon and Arya that was going to haunt them. She was going to realize that she was in love with Jon Snow at some point. Now, you can kind of say like, at what point is George comfortable making Arya, have sex, fall in love? I mean, you could say, oh, well, Daenerys is 13, 14, whatever. But these are supposed to be the heroes, so you want them to be morally correct. And so George would probably have Arya, get to 16 before she starts having, relations with Jon. I mean, obviously correct for us is like she makes it to 18, but George is writing racy things. So, and there's evidence of this as well, where Arya makes it to 11 years old, and then George wants to have a 5-year gap to make her to hit her to 16. But, George, the point is that George was planning to not have a 5-year gap. He was planning that the books would be taking place over years, that, you know, Game of Thrones would be like 2 or 3 years, and and then another one would be 2 or 3 years, and you just get to the point like you could grow Arya up so she could have her passionate relationship with Jon. Um, but so, in his original idea, Aegon might have been ruling Westeros for many years. Um, Daenerys might have been having a war with him for many years, and all of that's gone out the window. Now it's like Aegon's reign is going to be months. So yeah, deleting the Martell line. I mean, it looks like Arianne is going to side with Aegon, and who knows what happens with the rest of the Martells. I mean, he brings them in on the wrong side. Is that the idea? Is that they would be they'd be fighting for Aegon, and Daenerys would come in, and in the show the Dornish were on her side. So who knows? Maybe that's why there's two hosts. The Dornish would be split, but yeah, who knows if they'll surprise? I mean, in the show they made it. Prince of Dorne was still there. So, I mean, I don't think he's going to accomplish much other than conquest. But has Stannis accomplished much other than conquest? How do you think the others will get a dragon? So certainly that's what happened in the show. I mean, I guess all you got to do is have one die. I mean, well, we had Javelin. We had the Javelin, right? We had Night King Javelin like going up and killing a dragon. I guess that would, seems like the logical thing, and then it just rises as a white dragon. I mean, weirdly, Carbon and I have had a few podcasts about this, but like weirdly, the show seemed to have hit a lot of plot points that George had, at least at one time. Now, of course, like the whole point of the writing process is that you change your mind about stuff, and stuff evolves. Like you take a really bad idea like Jon Arya romance and you shift it into something else. The story gets to change rather than having an outline getting set in stone, which is weirdly what Game of Thrones kind of did. I mean, maybe George is free to write whatever he wants, I suppose, but it's weird how like now, because we don't have the future books, we have this like outline, and I do think a lot of those plot points were things that George believed at least at the time of telling D&D. So like, yeah, will they go north of the wall for some reason? Maybe I don't know if they're, on a white hunt, but like just to attack the others, and then they end up losing a dragon and the dragon ends up burning the wall down. I mean, maybe that was a George idea. It's quite possible. But yeah, they throw up some sort of javelin like that, and the dragon dies. Sure, something, through the eye. Yeah, I think this. I mean, it might have been. I think it's very good possibility that was George's original idea. Anyway, Aegon is a Dane. Arthur Dane is Sir Lancelot parallel, fathered from Rhaegar's children. Would explain why Lyanna wouldn't think he's cheating. Oh, okay. That's an interesting okay. So this, I was confused at first. This is the idea that Rhaegar agreed to the Elia marriage, so Arthur Dane, because he wanted his friend Arthur Dane to be with the one he loved. It was really the Arthur Dane Elia Martell romance going the entire time. And or at least he doesn't. He it was an arranged marriage, and he didn't care for Elia, and he was completely fine with the romance between Arthur and um, Elia, Arthur Dane and Elia Martell, and that they are the true parents of his child. Um, that doesn't explain the vision that Danny saw in the House of the Undying of Rhaegar saying that he needs to have three children to fulfill the prophecy. Um, that's the only thing about that. Like, if he thinks that like the dragon must have three heads, letting a Dane go in and bang his wife doesn't really fulfill that at all. You know, like I get it. It's like, duh, bro, yeah, go in and bang her, and then fulfill prophecy. Um, you know, I and then he explains it to Lyanna. He's like, Lyanna, actually, I'm not even with my wife. My wife is getting banged by my Kingsguard, Arthur Dane. Um, mm, mm. Yeah, that's a hard one to swallow. Hard one to swallow. Cameron Kasky, you're running for Congress in New York City? Interesting. Thematically, it'd be cool if Aegon's a rando who turns out to be a good king and gets killed by rightful heir Dany as she falls from grace. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's very much the chance. There's definitely some elements here of George seems to like the idea that in the classic stories, the Lord of the Rings and such, the villains are ugly and the heroes are pretty, right? And Ice and Fire is turning it on its head, where the villains are beautiful, right? Jamie, Cersei, Joffrey, they're all beautiful, and Daenerys is also beautiful. So this idea that people like Jorah and other characters around Dany, they turn a blind eye to her atrocities because she's so beautiful. There is a in the earlier drafts of Tyrion 3, when they're talking about Meleys the Monstrous, they talk about why Meleys the Monstrous was unsuccessful. And one of the things that Tyrion mentions is that he lacks the legitimacy because he was kind of ugly. And he tells Aegon, he like grabs him by the cheek and he's like, so make sure you don't do anything to harm that pretty face of yours, like lose your nose, you know? So this idea that like Tyrion's the hero and he's ugly, Jon is horse faced, you know, he's not specifically ugly, but he's not considered great looking. He's not Kit Harington. Arya is supposed to be horse faced, that kind of thing. That this idea that like the heroes aren't good looking and the villains are good looking. So the problem is that Aegon is good looking too, you know. So it may be that like they're both evil, Aegon and Dany, or it may be that, you know, yes, he's good looking, but he's nowhere in the same realm as Daenerys. But it's interesting that line is given, like where Tyrion is like, Meleys the Monstrous like wasn't gonna be successful because he was gross. Like he had a second head fucking growing out of his neck. Like no one was gonna follow that guy, despite the, you know, even if he is the true ruler of Westeros. It's the same with Tyrion. Like, you know, no one, you know, even if he is the heir to Castle Rock, he's still a dwarf. He's still a noseless dwarf. You know, people fall for the looks thing. Think of all the excuses that Sansa makes for Joffrey and Cersei throughout a Game of Thrones. So, I mean, I do think that it's quite fitting that Aegon turns out not to be a bad guy and he's killed off by Dany. and Danny turns out to be horrible. But he's good looking too. So, Westerosi trade makes no sense. Lemons weren't that valuable compared to furs, lumber, and whatnot. Also, we love Pluribus. We think it's great. The we. Yeah, I mean, you know, how much? I don't know how much. Um, I don't know how much citrus trade was going on in medieval times. I know that in medieval times, like the trade was mostly wool. Like everything was made out of wool, so wool was getting traded fucking everywhere, which makes sense because wool. I mean, it doesn't really spoil. You can send wool a lot of different places. I mean, obviously, like salt doesn't spoil. Like the general things that you think of. Um, but like lemons, like how far you get in that lemon before it rots? Uh, keep in mind, like today we do all sorts of things to make our fruit last, right? We've got one, genetic engineering, two, picking when they are green so that we can gas them later to get them ripe at the right time. Um, Refrigeration, all sorts of things to make produce like make it someplace. So I'm just trying to think like if you are growing a lemon in Spain, how likely are you going to get that lemon to London? Um, and what a luxury that would be. Citrus trade, medieval times. Was there a citrus trade? It was limited. Oh, okay. Now they dry everything. They'd like make juices and dry stuff and like dried fruits and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. This is why I like apricots and stuff, like dried apricots. Like that's how you're getting stuff around. There should be definitely more dried fruit in the story. I mean, we're getting salt beef constantly, but how often do I hear about some dried fruit? Is that in there? I mean, let me check our dried sap, dried mud, 77 results. Dried. Let's just try your dried apples. Are there any dried apples? It's got to be something. Come on. There we go. We got some dried apples. Ale and dried apples. Sack of dried apples. Salted mutton, dried apples, hard cheese. A few things. But yeah, it's weird when they start talking about like lemons being at the wall and it being in J.R. Mormont's water and stuff like that. More early pics of Preston with hair. I mean, there's um, I don't know how far back. Let's see here. I've heard you. Yeah, I've got some. Let's see some. Everybody the hair thing is kind of a funny thing because right now, like in entertainment and stuff, like everybody's getting these like everybody has fake hair. They get these like plugs and stuff that kind of look like doll hair and stuff like that. Um, and I know some people that have gotten the plugs and such, and they like it, but I don't know the idea of like removing follicles and stapling them in here and stuff like that. It's just like I don't know. On the one hand, like it's kind of easy. It's kind of easy having no hair. Um, I don't Plus, like, maybe if I were single or something, but I don't know. I'm married, so what do I need hair for? Um. Oh, here we go. Here's me. I'm just finding pictures of myself in random places. Okay. Um. Here's me taking a taxi in Uganda, and they just like plop this woman in my lap, and they're like, "Okay, let's go." And you're just like, "Okay, I guess this is my trip." We're all crammed in the taxi, and this Ugandan woman's just in my lap for no reason. Don't have. I'm trying to see how many close-ups I have of myself. Let's see. That's Rwanda. Where did I get to? I thought I didn't I go to the zoo? Shouldn't I have all the zoo pictures? Did somebody else take pictures of me at the zoo? Or do I fly? No, I fly back from Burundi to Uganda. So let's get out of Burundi. And then I go to the zoo. Oh yeah. So let's see. Younger. These are these Canadian guys that I like were partying in Burundi. You know, there I am. Got some hair there. Trying to find just random pictures of me. These random guys from Canada. Um, Man, what a fun time! What a fun time Burundi was. Hmm. Oh well. Oh well. Um, why is there so much unity among the Stormlords? They jump from Renly to Stannis to Joffrey as one. And surely this should be a huge theater of war. Hmm. You are right. You are right. Like, I'm trying to think of like, let's see. I mean, you're right in the sense that like Jamie makes the comment that every area of the kingdom has like the rival house that wants to usurp. And so like in the north it's the Boltons, and in the Riverlands it's the Freys, and in the Westerlands it was like Rain and and Tarbeck, and like and in Dorne it's the Ironwoods, and in the Reach it's the Florence, right? Yeah, but who is it in the Stormlands? Like who like in the Vale it's the Royces, right? Like who is it in the Stormlands? Like who's the house trying to usurp? I mean, Conningtons? Like I'm trying like honestly, like who can you come up with that wants to usurp the Baratheons? Um it's you just don't have that. You have it for literally every other kingdom. Like every other like I mean, I suppose you don't. Do you have it with the Iron Isles? I guess you don't necessarily have it with the Iron Isles, but but you have it with everybody else. Um, so yeah, like surely that like yes, this um, why aren't they fighting amongst themselves like the Riverlanders are? Like the Northmen are. Uh, like they like man, they weren't. Joffrey wasn't able to peel off like a single house. Like before, like back when Stannis and Renly had him, you know? Um, yeah, yeah. Ugh. I mean, it's just, you know, it's what the plot demands. What the plot demands, I suppose. Um, yeah, but um, let's see here. Can you talk about the shave pate? Even by a third read, I'm shocked that by the Danny story jump in A Dance with Dragons. Great character, but we get little insight, especially in FF. Um, so generally speaking, we're supposed to think about the shave pate as simply an extremist, and in many ways, he is uh, he is there to demonstrate who Hisdar is. Um, so right from the beginning, we're kind of told that the the great masters have this elaborate hair where they put it in all sorts of different designs and that represents the old ways. And so the shave pate, even though he's a highborn family, shaves his head completely to show that he is totally into a new way. And Hisdar, he presents himself in a compromise. He cuts his hair in kind of a mid range hair, so he represents like like compromising person going forward in the future. Um, Now it's a little it's I will say, considering that like George wrote an entire novel about this subject, about um and I'm talking about Fever Dream, about slavery and compromise. And Fever Dream is a rejection of that. It's a rejection of compromise. He's like, you cannot compromise on slavery. Because the character in the beginning is kind of like this fence sitter, and then at the end he's just like, no, fucking slavery is wrong. Um, so it is kind of funny because Hisdar is likable. Hisdar is a very likable character, while Shavepate is not. Um, Mainly because Shavepate is cruel and wants to kill children. So, you know, it's an interesting twist here that George is taking the correct moral position, which Shavepate is the correct moral position. Slavery is wrong, but his methods are atrocious. Um, Meanwhile, like his methods are better, but he's still in this compromising position where he's like, let's allow a little slavery here and a little slavery there. And that's supposed to be the contrast. So in many ways, you know, the Shave Pate is a mirror to Hisdar. We're supposed to understand their characters together. Um, and in the end, you know, the Shave Pate kind of becomes this Littlefinger stand-in. He's this character that God, no one should trust. How are you not? How are you trusting this guy? This guy is horrible. How did he ever get any power? He's obviously trying to, to like do all this stuff, and so he completely like he's tolerated by Danny, and then he completely tricks Barristan and gets Barristan to essentially coup Hisdar when Hisdar hasn't really done anything. Um, so I think you're supposed to think about Shavepate as a ruthless, immoral, on a small scale, ruthless, immoral schemer, um, but who has ultimately the correct like moral position, in the sense that he's against slavery and wants to like change Marinese society. But we don't know if it's like self-serving. He did want to marry Danny and things like that. So I mean, we're not, you know, obviously the Shave Pate is supposed to be a violent revolutionary who's immoral because his methods are wrong. Um, you know, he's too draconian, uh, and so that's more or less who he is. But he exists as a mirror to Hisdar. Like you're supposed to consider and understand the two characters together. Um, yeah. But you're supposed to hate him. But man, he really did a number on Barristan. Tricked everybody, so. We dreamed Gecko point of view character. I mean, he's just basically like, let me run around this wall. Let me eat this bug. Let me make some noise. Oh, what does Arain Waters know about the Krakens? Is the Celtigar horn or Celtigar horn coming back into the story? Victarion could use that Valyrian steel axe also. Did Arain Waters have a Valyrian steel axe? Really? Or we're just talking about the or does the Celticars have an axe? Let me see here. Because I know Salador San was upset that he didn't get to invade, right? To take Claw Isle. So Axel Florent suggests that Stannis sack Claw Isle as reprisal for Ardrian's surrender. He declares for Joffrey, and that's it. Where are we getting? What's the Valyrian steel axe? Really? This is something I'm totally forgetting about. The Celtic Army Valyrian steel axe. Oh yeah, it's mentioned there in Davos 4. So I guess they were supposed to pick it up. But is the Celtic, like, I'm trying to think of, like, with regards to the horn, I'm trying to think like when it could come back into the story. Like who is gonna, like, what point of view would find out about it, or who wants to invade? Because right now, the Celtigars are supporting Tommen. So you could get to the point where the Golden Company could invade and get the axe. Yeah. And then it could come into the story that way. Some character around them who were there could be using the axe. The other question is, okay, maybe, or you wait until Dany invades that area, which is what happened in the show and is implied to happen because of the Dance of the Dragons with Rhaenyra being in that position with her dwarf advisor, and Dany would be in that position with her dwarf advisor. Would they take that and then get that axe and that horn? But I just don't know what the horn would be useful for. I mean, it's supposed to bring Krakens from the deep, but I don't think it's coming back. I don't think it's coming back at all. I just don't think there's any opportunity for it. But there's too many horns in the fucking story. Too many goddamn horns. He says it summons Krakens that he thinks would be useful. Nah. I mean, if it comes back, I certainly don't think it's going to summon any fucking Krakens. We haven't had any horns. Like, we haven't had any horns actually do anything. We've heard vaguely about that magical horns can control dragons. Vaguely, abstractly. But we've never seen it happen. You know? The most magic we've seen from a horn is like maybe some smoke coming from a dude's lips, and then secondhand we hear about him dying. But that's it. So I don't know. I don't think any of the, I don't know. I don't think there's any time for that horn. But Rain Waters, I don't know if Rain Waters knows anything about Krakens. He's living I mean, as much as any other pirate or any other seafaring dude. And we saw where Westworld and Raised by Wolves ended up. Ooh. Yeah, I mean, okay, I will grant you, Jared, that this is that's a very good point. That when you being a cynical bastard, but there's a lot of truth to this, is that you can creating an incredible mystery box and bringing up really fascinating questions is a lot easier than answering them and having them and pulling them into the story and having a satisfying story. That is absolutely true. We all watched fucking Lost. We all we understand that you can create all these great ideas and then they don't fucking go anywhere. You have all these mysteries and you're like, what's the answer to this? And then there's no fucking answer. Carmine and I were kind of talking about Pluribus, and already, I mean, if you start thinking about Pluribus plot too much, you're like, already this isn't making much sense. But we'll see what happens. But I mean, I still right now the fucking show's great, but it's true that once you start thinking about it, you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Like how are they doing that? You know, they must be. I mean, if you don't want to kill bugs, you won't be able to grow as many crops, and then people will starve. What? How is that working? Literally, the entire system is set up to kill animals. You can't, and in order to feed people. If you're not killing bugs, people are dying because crops are getting eaten. You know. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, getting there. Tyrion often recalls Jaime talking about battle and war. What experience he had before the War of the Five Kings? I mean, he's got the Ironborn uh, revolt. That's about it. But that's it. He just has the Balon's uprising. That's the only war experience I can possibly think that they would have, other than fighting against the Kingswood Brotherhood or something, brigands and stuff like that. But Tyrion is right, because Jaime brings up being battle drunk and passes that on to Tyrion. So Tyrion's like, oh, I'm battle drunk. And so Jaime just has stuff from Balon's uprising. That's the only thing. Try to think of anything else, because Jaime did zero fighting in the War of the Five Kings, unless you count stabbing Mad King in the back. So Jaime didn't do any fighting then, but he did some fighting during the uprising. So I imagine that it must be from that, right? like during the Greyjoy Rebellion. And I'm trying to think. Because which I suppose, I mean, it is kind of weird that you're sending your Kingsguard off to like fight, you know, for this storming of Pike and stuff like that. But does Jaime ever even mention it? Does Jaime mention his fucking being in this war? Let me see here. Early life. Does he ever say he was in the Greyjoy Rebellion? Hmm. Jaime never mentions it, but I suppose it would be the only. It'd be the only option. Unless he's talking about battling the fucking Kingswood Brotherhood. But when are you going to be like battle drunk in that? It's got to be fucking. He had to have been in the Greyjoy Rebellion. That's the only thing that makes any logical sense. And had some battle there. Was he given command? He was given command of something. I mean, I guess he had, because all these people want to fight in these wars to get cred. So he's got to. They have to allow these highborn people to at least pretend to command people to get all their cred. So it's got to, even though Jaime never mentions it, like Jaime has to have been like in a battle in the Greyjoy Rebellion. And he must be talking about that. That's it. Dany betrays instead of being betrayed 3 times. The prophecy then being self-fulfilling. Let me think about that. Let's see here. Because he says 10, what is it? It's like 3 betrayals. Is that the wording? What's the wording here? 3 fires you must light, 3 mounts you must ride, 3 treasons you will know. 1 for blood, once for blood, once for gold, once for love. Three treasons you will know. That's an interesting idea that it's not specifying which direction the treasons are going, right? Like, you know a treason if you're coming up with it too, right? 3 treasons you'll know. So Dany betrays her brother. So there's the one for blood. And then for gold, what is she? I don't know what has she done. She hasn't done it. She hasn't betrayed anyone for gold. She hasn't really been in need of gold yet. So maybe in the future. It's an interesting idea, though. I'll grant you that the betrayals, that the treasons is her doing the treason, not her receiving the treason. That's a interesting idea. But besides the blood one, I'm trying to think of any other treasons. At 15, Balon Greyjoy had 2 salt wives. He should have some bastards like Euron. Also, Book Euron has secret alliance with Cersei. Doesn't attack the West. Yeah, Balon Greyjoy should have lots of bastards. I mean, even Theon thinks that he probably has some bastards floating around from all of his sleeping around. I mean, Theon himself, his own bastards. Yeah, no, there should be a million. There should be lots of fucking Balon Greyjoy bastards floating around. But you're right that, like, why aren't they in the story? Where do these bastards go? Oh, absolutely, like 100%. There should be some bastards floating around. So some Balon Greyjoy bastards floating around. Because we know his boys swim, because Theon and Asha exist, and his older brothers died and stuff like that. But where are the other guys? Where are the other ones? But does Book Euron have a secret alliance with Cersei? Doesn't attack the West. So, I mean, the true reason why I think Euron doesn't attack the Westerlands is because the plot requires him to later team up with the Westerlands, and he doesn't want to cause a problem there. I'm trying to think if there's a logical reason why the Iron Men like give the suggestion of the Arbor as like the first place to go. Like, why wouldn't you be like Lannisport? Like, why wouldn't you first say like, let's fucking attack Lannisport? Especially considering, like, you guys are the ones that, like, the Lannisters specifically hurt them during the Greyjoy rebellion and things like that. And caught them between had the big defeat in Fair Isle and such. Let me think of anything here. You're absolutely right that they're like, why wouldn't you be attacking them for revenge, Fair Isle and such? I mean, we can create some headcanon there that, okay, maybe there's something to do with the 2 house cases, a few marriages, that make it uncomfortable for certain Reavers to do that. Because when we actually when you examine the appendix of a Game of Thrones of the later books, there are some marriages between Westerland people and people in the Iron Isles. So I mean, you can kind of get some headcanon. They're just like, well, we have too many alliances with people in the Westerlands right now, but we don't have that many alliances with people in the Reach, so we'll attack them. But considering that you don't have to sail very far to fucking get Lannisport, like, why wouldn't you attack Lannisport when it's right there? Let's see. Aeron Victarion. Oh, so let's see if anybody brings up. Does anyone bring up Lannisport ever? Here we go. And that's the thing, is they actually, like, in captives. They burnt Tywin's fleet. See, he even says, my brother would have you content with the dismal north. But I shall give you Lannisport, Highgarden, the Arbor, Old Town, Riverlands and the Reach, the Kingswood and the Rainwood, Dorne and the Marches, the Mountains of the Moon and the Vale of Arryn, Tarth and the Stepstones. I say we take it all. I say we take Westeros. You know, he includes it right there. But then later on, after promising him them Lannisport, then in the Reaver chapter, they say, the Crow's Eye says we'll have all of Westeros, the Arbor, Old Town, Highgarden. That's where you'll find your gold. And they say, Old Town is richer, the Arbor richer still. Redwine fleet is off away. Lannisport doesn't have a fleet at all. The Arbor we want, said Red Ralph. Like, why? Like, what is directing them towards that? Now, let me look at this map of the South. Like, is it that much closer to go to the Arbor? No. See, this is the thing. You're absolutely right that like they're all hanging at the Shield Islands. So they can sail north to Lannisport, or they can sail. I mean, it's nearly equal distance, but I would actually say that Lannisport is closer. So they can sail north to Lannisport and attack it instead, rather than going down to the Arbor. There's no fleet there. The only headcanon I have is just like there must be some sort of, alliances. Don't want to attack, House Case or whatever. And there's a few others like I want to say Westerland houses. I'm trying to remind myself of which ones married into the any of them. Farman? No. Well. Yeah, I mean, the plot needs it to happen, but you're right that there isn't really a very good reason, other than maybe there'd be a couple houses that are married in. And I do remember them. I can't remember the other minor ones on who was married in. Who's House Harlaw? Are they married to anybody? They're married. No. There was something in the fucking appendix besides Case. I'm basically watching this in reverse. Dorne is fucked, in my opinion. Dorne is too slow. The monarchy will fall. Then Westeros will adopt some kind of proto-capitalism or oligarchism due to Baelish's meddling. Like in between of all this, I go back and forth about the Dornish master plan, because like if you on a very basic level, Doran's plan makes no fucking sense. Everybody kind of like all fans recognize this, right? Like he has been carefully planning. This guy has a personality of being meticulous and and planning everything out. And he's a big thinker, and he's sitting around this chess game thinking about all of the moves. His plan is send his son with an old marriage alliance to try to get Daenerys to like fight his war for him. It's not anything that has any complexity. It doesn't require years and years of planning, especially like back when it was team up with Viserys. Like his whole plan is team up with Viserys. Like that's not a fucking plan. That's not the plan of a chess master. It's not fucking 3D chess. It's fucking 3D. He's not playing 3D, 4D side ass, okay? Like everyone recognizes that Doran's plan is stupid and simple, which is where the Dornish master plan came from, and how something needs to be more complicated. And on some level, George recognizes this because he does, like, Aegon does think, like, yeah, like he sent Quentin with only like 5 dudes to Essos in the Aegon sample chapters. Like, George himself recognizes that the plan is stupid. Now, is he just recognizing it in retrospect and lampshading it? I don't know. Because on the one hand, like, the Dornish story was never supposed to be as big as it was. Like, it started out as a fucking prologue, and then just expanded and got split into all these fucking chapters. So I'm torn on this. Like, on the one hand, like, yeah, the Dornish story and how big it is an accident. But on the other hand, like, on a really fundamental level, the Dornish story, as presented, that his big fucking plan was Viserys Targaryen, is stupid. And so, I mean, there's a reason this whole shit, like, my Dornish master plan, like went viral and, like, created my channel, right? That's the genesis of everything, is that a lot of people out there were like, yes, like, this makes no sense. How can we make sense of this all? Like, if this idea connected with enough people, like, fuck, like, Dorne doesn't make any sense. How can we make sense of this? And the Dornish master plan was an attempt to do that. But yeah, this idea of, like, Dorne being too slow and stuff, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I go back and forth. Like, was it all an accident? Is George just fucking writing and he doesn't know what he's fucking doing? And Doran's big fucking plan was Viserys Targaryen. Like, was that it? Was that it? But is Dorne fucked? I mean, I mean, Dorne's fucked one way or the other. But I mean, they live in a desert, but and the water's all running out. But no, I mean, I think that, like, Aegon has got an important role to play. I think that George left the door open on whether Quentin was alive, and I think if he's alive, he would have a big role too. Archibald and Drinkwater, of course, like, going to play big roles too in the future. So Dorne and the Vale are the only ones with men, like, they're the only ones left with forces left. So, they've got to play a big role in the future, I suppose. And you could also look at it in the sense of, like that, yes, the Dornish story and the Ironborn story were accidental stories. They were never supposed to be that big. But at the same time, they're dominating the story since the year 2001. So you could say that, like, it's been 24 years of the Dornish and the Ironborn stories being the dominant stories. I mean, granted, because it's taken so long for these books to come out, but like, the Aegon and Quentin plots are huge, and the Ironborn plots are enormous. Theon and Asha are the best part of A Dance with Dragons. So as opposed to, I don't know, proto-capitalism and oligarchism to the Baelish meddling. I mean, I don't know. George is he goes back and forth on what he believes, but he's certainly into, like, meritocracy. I think he believes in meritocracy. So he'd like that to happen, but this is funny. The only thing that the male line quote is missing is Illyria looking at the camera and winking. That's true. Rhaegar wants another child, 3 heads. Wouldn't he hope for another girl, not Jon? Yeah. Also, he'd want to betroth them to each other. So, 2 sons, husband and daughter, wife problem. Yeah, but I think he's thinking final battle for the final battle or stuff, something. But yes, he's naming them in a naming scheme where he's expecting a girl, right? He's definitely naming him in the naming scheme of Aegon Rhaenys Visenya. And so a third kid coming out with a penis would be like, ah, fuck, I was expecting a girl. That's definitely like, it's definitely a problem. And I mean, and Jorah brings this up. He brings up the fact that there was no Visenya and that we're supposed to be looking for this girl. Instead, Jon is Visenya. But would he want to betroth them to one another? Yeah, maybe. But I guess if Rhaegar is all over the map, whatever, doing polygamy with Lyanna or whatever he's doing, it's does he even care if they're trueborn or whatever? But I guess he's just thinking that those, the three will be part of the prophecy for saving the world. He's not thinking past that, I'm guessing. But for making marriages. If Peter told Stannis and Renly that Cersei's cheating on Robert, and Stannis figured out the incest thing while Renly just started plotting to find a new queen. Okay, so this is getting into the frustration that we've talked about a few times about the Renly story, the dropped Renly plot of a Game of Thrones. Like in a Game of Thrones, Renly is plotting to replace, seems to be plotting to have Robert divorce Cersei to marry Marjorie for reasons. To be nice to his boyfriend is essentially all we've got. Like, what is Renly getting out of it? He's making his boyfriend happy. He's going to ask his brother to alienate an entire kingdom, the Westerlands, who have all this like power, and alienate the faith of the Seven by introducing the concept of divorce, just so he can make his boyfriend happy. It doesn't make any sense. Now, so for a long time I was like, it doesn't make any sense. Like the only thing that makes sense is that Renly knew about the incest and was expecting a big break and was between the Lannisters and Robert to begin with, and was priming who he would marry in the place that Cersei would either be executed or divorced or set aside, and he knew about the incest. However, in A Clash of Kings, when the incest is presented to Renly, the conversation is very believable that Renly didn't know about the incest. And as we go through the case, he doesn't really have a motivation to lie. He seems completely honest when he's like, that he didn't have any idea. So we have got this contradiction here, is the Renly claiming he doesn't know about the incest in A Clash of Kings, and this weird plot that he was doing in a Game of Thrones, and they kind of go against each other. So this major problem. And so this is like, okay, maybe Renly didn't know about the incest, but he knew that Cersei was cheating in general as a kind of like compromise here. Because that way he can be shocked about the incest, but still have a reason to scheme in the first place, in the first book, which I suppose it could work. I think he's angry that, I think Renly doesn't believe that Joffrey is a bastard, though. I think it's like, he would have to just be like, oh, she's cheating, but she doesn't know, but he doesn't, but the children are still trueborn, and she's not cheating with Jaime. Like, maybe that rumor would somehow work. I mean, it's probably, we could come up with something where it works, but I think in general it's a George R. R. Martin error, that we can come up with some headcanon to solve it. I mean, the best headcanon is probably just Renly is lying in A Clash of Kings. Like, that's the best, like, clearly George wrote it with Renly not lying, but the best headcanon is that he is in fact lying because nothing makes sense otherwise. So, so. Astronaut turtle power. I think George set up Osney as backup Valonqar in case he can't get Jaime and Cersei together in the right time. My theory is Varys would free Osney. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. The thing is everybody's a fucking younger brother. I mean, nearly half of men are younger brothers. Actually, probably more, because if younger brother, it would be to be most men, I think, would be younger brothers, because you're either the eldest or you're a subsequent male. So you're a second son or a third son or a fourth son. So you're adding up all of the second, third, fourth, fifth sons in the world against the number of first sons. And the thing is like, most men are younger brothers, right? Because it's not just like, it's just little brother. That's all it is. So the problem is that most men are little brothers. Nearly, most men are little brothers. So it's really tough to be like, oh, who could the Valonqar be? Oh, well, flip a fucking coin. I mean, But no, it's interesting to think that it could be something like one of the Kettle Blacks. Why not? Because at least in that situation, we're talking about like they're in a brother context. Like some characters, like we don't think about them in a brother context. Like when I think about Courtney Penrose may very well be a little brother, but we don't fucking know anything about him. We don't know his family, stuff like that. Also, little brother, like, geez, you could be, you could be the eldest male and still be the little brother to the female. So there's so many little brothers in the little brother context. It's essentially like anytime the male is not firstborn. Like if a woman is born and then you're the next male, you are little brother. Male is born and little. So as long as you're a second child and male, or second to N, second 3, 4, ... N, you're a little brother as long as you're male. Why is Robb never referred to in an official regal capacity as King Robert in the same way Sweet Robin is called Lord Robert Arryn? I'm trying to think of the amount of time that passes, because Robb is only a lord in a very short window, right? Because Sweet Robin's lord, Jon Arryn dies before the book begins, so Sweet Robin is lord the entire story that we have, so he's always Lord Robert Arryn. But Robb is only a lord really short window. Here we go. He is called Lord Rob in Catalan 10, Catalan 11. And he's called Lord Rob. He's called Lord Rob a few times. And is he called King Rob? He's called King Rob plenty. But the idea is to call him King Robert? Well, the thing is, I don't think Rob's name is Robert. I think it's like just Rob. Like it can't be lengthened to Robert. Like I think it's just Rob by itself. Like I think that's just the end of it, is that like Rob's name is just Rob. No length to it. While Sweet Robin's name is Robert, you know. It's all you can kind of do. But I hope I'm getting that question right. And what you're asking. Like Rob is not actually short for Robert. It's like John. John is not short for anything. It's not short for Jonathan. It's just John. Who is the most minor named character in A Song of Ice and Fire you can think of? I think the other wandering crow that disappears. That Conwy? No. No, Conway's there. Gurren? No, he appears twice. Is it Gurren? Gurren's. So that's at least two. That's at least two people. There's definitely like some random characters, like random guards that are mentioned like one time, and then just like disappear. There's and like members of the Night's Watch that have been mentioned like one time. Like in the going over, I would just remember a few random ones that were. I mean, every time we pass by somebody that's just like named, we're just like we laugh because like they're named one time and then they're never brought back into the story. But fuck, I'm trying to remember some of these random guards that are never mentioned again. But yeah, like Gurren is kind of funny because he's this wandering crow that just is never brought back again. But I'm trying to think of like a really random once named character that appears like one time. And then, but the thing is that you have to have like they're named, and then they have no like they're not significant to the plot at all. Somebody asked me in a comment section about what happened to the royal steward. The royal steward like was this character in a Game of Thrones, and who announces people that enter, and he's just never he's mentioned like once in a Clash of Kings and then never again. But he's not named. But there's a few. Let's see here. Let me get some good ones. Let me find a random septon that's just been like. No, that's septons. I mean, there's definitely like a whole bunch of people that have appeared in the appendices that have never appeared. You know, like as I say, like some of them that I've thrown in the fanfic, like Marwyn Frey and stuff. You're just like, oh, they're just there. Robert Frey, they're just there. Oh. Um, randomly named. You know, some of the sellswords. Oh, greetings from Argentina. I love all your hard work that you do for our community. Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate it. I went to Argentina, by the way. I haven't been back since I went to Argentina in 2001, December of 2001. I went on vacation to Argentina. To an Argentinian, that's very funny. But to everybody else, you're like, who cares? But I went to Argentina December 2001. It was after 9/11, so like flights anywhere in the world were super cheap, and so I booked a ticket to Buenos Aires, and of course, you know, the Argentinian financial crisis like happened, and it was really a fucking very interesting time, like attending these crazy protests in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, and things starting out 1-1 peso to dollar and finishing my trip 4-1. Do you still think that your old theory about the purple wedding was right? Um, I truly think that George leaves a lot of things open, you know, and you know, if he wants to come back to him, he'll come back to him, but he never makes things like 100% definitive. So like with regards to the purple wedding, like yeah, there was a whole reason why we're given the cup and the pie at the same time. There's a whole reason why we were given like the server appearing and things like that. There's a whole reason that the King's Guard are discussing it and debating things. You know, if he wanted to come back and change it, he could. But which is why people keep going and overanalyzing things like that, because George leaves the door open. The same with Quentin's alive, you know. So, now logically speaking, like, does the Queen of Thorns Littlefinger plot make any goddamn sense? No. But George also writes things that are messy, so it's very hard to judge. The one thing that makes you kind of wonder that maybe that it's just the Queen of Thorns or what the Queen of Thorns and Littlefinger after all is the fact that it hasn't really been revisited. But you know, there's more time. George also has skipped books before revisiting material, so. It's not that I think that the theory is right or wrong. I think I'm just very open to the idea that George writes things ambiguously, never really wants to answer stuff, and leaves things open so he can come back, you know, and that's it. There's also this idea of like, what is truth based on the text versus like, what do I think author intent was? And those two things are also like hard to reconcile, you know, because when you go through things and you find things that are logical, if based on the explanation, and then you actually have like, well, what did the author really think? Those are two different things. Like we recently, the discussion in my comments section about the Sansa situation in A Game of Thrones. It is very clear that in interviews that George thought that Sansa's betrayal of Ned in A Game of Thrones was super significant. And Cersei, for some reason, thinks that Sansa's betrayal is super significant and that it totally saved her. But logically speaking, it doesn't make any goddamn sense. No, Littlefinger told everybody everything, and you just had Littlefinger revealing everything. Sansa telling Cersei that she was supposed to go on a ship at noon for the North doesn't make a fucking lick of a difference, because Littlefinger has already spoiled the fucking plot. He's already like revealed Ned's coup. So what is fucking Sansa doing? Now, it's very clear when you go to the interviews, like, and So Spake Martin's, where he talks about this. And the fact that Cersei in A Clash of Kings is like, oh, well, it was a close thing. It was a good thing that Sansa like betrayed her father. Like, it's very clear that the author intent was that Sansa's betrayal was significant. But logically speaking, no, it wasn't. Like, it was not. Like, that, it's just, George just dropped the fucking ball there. And so there's a lot of that with the Purple Wedding. There's a lot of that with Who Sent the Cat's Paw, where you can go, well, there's also author intent. And was the author really think, because, there's times where, he says, oh, we're going to, with the cat's paw, we're going to find out who sent the cat's paw. And then the answer is, I think every fan thinks that the answer to that Joffrey sent the cat's paw is dumb. Like, I think every fan thinks it's the worst answer you could possibly have to who sent the cat's paw. Revealed in the most ridiculous fashion. Like, Tyrion just thinking about it when he's drunk. And you're like, what? Like, it makes no sense. So you do have this conflict of like text, like what does the text say versus like what did the author mean? What was the author's intent? Like if I write down it's spring outside, the flowers are blooming, and then later in an interview I'm like, oh, I wrote that it was summer. You'd be like, the text fucking says it's spring, and the text says the flowers are blooming. That's what happens in the spring. Everything logically speaking should be that it's spring. You fucking like, and now you're telling me your author intent was something completely different. Well, that's just you fucking up. It's spring. So Purple Wedding is all of that. There's author fucking up. There's him leaving it ambiguous. It's all for him to come back later. There's all these things floating around in there. So it's like, it's really hard because it's like, oh, do I still think the theory is right? It's just a big mystery, man. It's just a big mystery. Cersei's Sophie's choice between Tommen and Myrcella. All things being equal, Cersei is a big fucking hypocrite and is a sexist and would probably fucking kill Myrcella and take Tommen. But all things are not equal. So you've got to like remove that. Cersei's choice between them is who realistically gives her the most power. And so I'm going to be facing this in the fanfic where Cersei is going to choose Myrcella. Well, she's going to choose Myrcella at some point, because it's the path for her power. So her Sophie's choice is completely dependent upon like the circumstance of which child leads to her being in power. Because for the most part, she doesn't fucking care. She doesn't fucking care about them. She's fine with them. Like, she's fine with her kids. Don't get me wrong. But she doesn't really care about her kids. Her kids are tools for her own power. So, I mean, she kind of liked Joffrey. I'll grant that she kind of liked Joffrey, but she doesn't really have that kind of feeling about Tommen or Myrcella. But, this isn't the show. Where the show, they're like, Cersei's a mother. She's a strong mother who will protect her children. That's not book Cersei. But I know it's like a kind of open answer here, but like in whatever circumstance leads to the most power. Like if Tommen did what he did in the show and like completely like went with Marjorie and betrayed Cersei, she'd be like, fine, fuck it, I'm with Myrcella. Myrcella's queen. Dornish law, motherfuckers. Like that's what she would do. Because it's all about her. That's the one thing, is it's all about her. What to expect in Arya 2? Arya 2. This we're talking about the fanfic here. So it hasn't really been planned too much, but I did have a discussion with Trey the Explainer, and he convinced me that there is this Venetian festival where everyone dresses up and that there's this like historical Venetian festival where everyone dresses up. And since Bravos is kind of loosely based on Venice, that would be an interesting setting for the chapter. Also in the chat, so I think some things that are going to be there. Obviously, Dunsen is going to be in the chapter. Arya is going to be pursuing Dunsen. I think we're going to be also having a moment of Nymeria in a dream as well in the chapter, running into a lot of the characters that are searching for Jaime in the Riverlands. So I think all of that is happening. So I think we're going to be having this carnival in Bravos. There's going to be some mentions of the Bravosi Sea Lord elections and things like that. In the background, stuff with the key holders and such. We've got to deal with that political situation. And Arya's not going to be alienated from the House of Black and White, like some people think. Like not yet. That she is going to be out under new disguise and is going to see Dunsen and want to deal with Dunsen. And so all of that is going to happen. Now I haven't gotten specifics, but these are all of the elements that will have to be juggled in. The carnival, Dunsen, probably Harry, Harris is probably still there. And I'm trying to think, like, got to deal with the politics of the town and all of this sorts of things, but also, so it may end up being a long chapter considering like how much needs to be handled in that chapter. But yeah, that's the plan. The plan is that this sort of Mardi Gras event is happening, while maybe a celebration of the new Sea Lord and Arya trying to check off another person on her death list. So yeah. Blackfish support the Aegon cause because he was Derry's squire. I think this will come up, definitely. But there is some questions here. We have to get into like Blackfish's also the Blackfish's hatred of like the red wines and stuff like that. I understand that some people are like, oh, he rejected all of these marriages because he's gay. Well, lots of people get married because they're gay. Marriage is not romantic in this environment. So I think that also the Blackfish is going to be it's a tragic story. So I've got to figure out like where the disagreement will happen, because right now Blackfish is going to be somewhat supportive of Elaine, but I do wonder if there's going to be a rift between Blackfish and Elaine coming in, and when that's going to happen, as they, what they're going to do towards that. But for the most part, it's like, this is all like fanfic, but in general, the Blackfish supporting the Aegon cause, I think in the short term, maybe, then there's the question of like, when Dany arrives, what would happen? One of the things that makes me think that we're talking about George's plan. One of the things that make me thinks that Sweet Robin is going to support Danny is the fact that there is this scene in in um in Fire and Blood where they fly around Ronald Aaron, and he then supports Visenya, right? Ronald Aaron. So Visenya like comes and she flies around the sickly little boy on her dragon, and then he supports her, and which makes me think, okay, well this sounds like Danny coming to Sweet Robin and flying him around. Sweet Robin likes flying, and so that he would do this and then be like, yeah, yay, I'm for Danny, that kind of thing. So I think initially, yeah, you may have something like that, but Blackfish also like was super against. I mean, he fought in the Blackfish fought in the Nine Penny Kings. So if he finds out that Aegon's a Blackfyre, assuming Aegon's a Blackfyre, he would be very much against Aegon. And it'd be funny if like Danny just put forward propaganda that Aegon is a Blackfyre when he's not. So um, looking forward to your pluribus content. Have you seen Invasion of the Body Snatchers or the episode of Rick and Morty's Auto Exotic Assimilation? I'm not sure about the titles of the different Rick and Morty's. I've seen the first 4 seasons of Rick and Morty. But yeah, I've seen Invasion of the Body Snatchers, at least the one from the 70s. I've seen that one. What a depressing movie. What an incredibly depressing movie. But yeah, there's a lot of elements of that in Pluribus. Obviously, she makes references to the pod people. But at the same time, like, there's so many similarities to A Song for Leah in Pluribus that mm, mm. Well, China's one child policy mean most men are only one child. Well, I mean, China during that period, one child policy is over, doesn't exist anymore. But not that people are back to having many kids, but I mean, people are having fewer and fewer kids. There's definitely like fewer younger brothers than there ever has been, but China's still only 1.4 billion. That's like a sixth of the world's population, so it's not that many. Um, it's like Elliott Smith or Kurt Cobain. I honestly am not very familiar with Elliott Smith's work. I mean, I know everything Kurt Cobain did, but um, I don't know. I don't know anything really about Elliott Smith. I mean, I'll have to read something about him, but I can't really make the um, a comment on it. I don't know Elliott Smith's work very well. Um, let's see here. Have you read Terry Pratchett? I have not, but is Terry Pratchett? Oh, he did Discworld, right? Okay. Um, and he wrote Elder Scrolls. That's so funny. That's so funny. Good Omens. Is this the one that's been adapted? Or my no. Oh yeah, it has been adapted into a TV series. Like I've seen scenes from Good Omens. I haven't seen Good Omens, the show, but no, I haven't read anything by Terry Pratchett. I'm sorry. Um, there's no way that only child is most of the world. It's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. People either have like don't have kids or they have a bunch or they have a bunch of kids. Um, Favorite Thanksgiving food: corn pudding versus mustard sauce. I'll tell you, my favorite Thanksgiving food was um, like good dinner rolls. Like my mother used to make really incredible rolls, but I'm gluten free now and dairy free, so I couldn't possibly eat them anymore. But I used to just sit there and just eat the rolls. Like her rolls were so good. Um, but I'm a fan of a good pumpkin pie, a good apple pie. I love stuffing. Stuffing is fucking great. I mean, Thanksgiving food is pretty great. It's pretty awesome. Um, I mean, except for the ones that suck, like your green bean casserole is horrible. Why would anyone have green bean casserole? But no, no, I'm a big fan of the of the rolls and the stuffing and the pumpkin pie and apple pie. I mean, I like turkey well enough, but it's still just turkey, you know. But turkey and gravy, and I like I like some good cranberry. I like some good cranberry. I like more of the fresh cranberry where there's like pieces of cranberry in there, not the gelatinous one. You know, like I'm very pro Thanksgiving. I'm not very pro. Bad time for coming here. I wonder what this is in reference to. Um, let's get down to rereading my old philosophy textbooks um, and realizing how much George R. R. Martin drew from thinkers like Locke on morality and Hume on identity in A Song of Ice and Fire. You know, I struggle with this a lot. So people ask me like, oh, if you interviewed George R. R. Martin, what would you talk about? And I think I would probably structure the interview more like inside the acting studio. I don't know if you remember that show. Inside the acting studio was a show starring like here I'll just put in a little it was this weird bearded guy. Will Ferrell once played him on SNL. But the thing about Inside the Acting Studio, what was great is the guy would go through the actor's entire fucking career. He would start at the beginning and be like, tell me about this show. Tell me about this movie. And then you did this movie. And then you did this movie. And you get the whole evolution. Like if I were to interview George R. R. Martin, I would start at the beginning and I'd be like, okay, like let's talk about the hero, and let's talk about those early sci-fi stories in the 70s. Let's talk about Song for Leah and how you felt when you won those first Hugos. Let's talk about Dying of the Light. Let's talk about Fever Dream. Let's talk about Armageddon Rally. Let's talk about Beauty and the Beast. Let's talk about Wild Cards. Let's talk, I would do that. I would go with like, it would take too long. He'd probably go on he probably wouldn't want to commit that much time, and he'd probably go on a lot of fucking tangents, and I wouldn't, get what I wanted. But like, um, and one of the big reasons why I would like to structure it like that is because I want to get to the Dying of the Light period, and I want, because Dying of the Light is definitely his most philosophical book, and I'd love to know what he actually read. I've heard him mention existential, like I've heard him mention like using the word existentialist but an existential crisis. But people kind of use that word generally when they don't really know what existentialism is. And so, like, some people go, "Oh, I'm having this existential crisis." Well, okay, that's different from existentialism, but they're related. But you know, so I'd love to know like how much he studied of philosophy, how much specifically, yeah, Locke, Hume, but also I think Sartre would be like very interesting to know. He mentions Sartre by name once in the Armageddon Rag. Some character is reading a book by Sartre, but like, I would love to know how much George read of that. Because it might be that he didn't, and I'm just imagining it. Because I asked him about Plato, and because I saw these parallels to Plato, and he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I would love to have that interview and discussion with George, because that's what I would talk about with him, would be, the philosophy aspect. Like, does that come in? Especially when, I think about it with Dying of the Light and with In the House of the Worm as the main ones, about having those like moments. But I don't know. I don't know. So he very well, because I was burned with asking him about Plato, I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'm imagining these connections. But that's what I would ask him. Oh, this is very funny. Most people don't know what Jack is talking about here, but there's this guy who has been chronicling the life of Lyndon Johnson, and he has written, at this point it is, oh my God, he's his biographer. I heard about this first 25 years ago. Somebody told me about this, and they're like, "Oh my God, this guy's just writing these like biographies of of Lyndon Johnson," and they're enormous. And he's like nowhere close to finishing. So, the years of Lyndon Johnson. So he wrote the first one, book one, in 1982. Won all these awards. He wrote the second one in 1990. He wrote the third one in 2002. He wrote the fourth one in 2012. Altogether, they have, each of the books is about 800 pages. So he's got 3,000 pages that he's written so far on Lyndon Johnson, this biography. He says he's going to have a final volume November 2011. He's getting old, right? He's expected to remainder of, how far does the book 4 get? It gets to 1964, including his presidential primary against Kennedy. That's ridiculous. That he's going to somehow finish Johnson's presidency and cover the rest of his life in one book. This is hilarious. He's still working on it. Oh my God, he gave an update. He says that he's written 980 pages of the manuscript and he's still working on sections on the creation of Medicare and Medicaid. Oh my God. And his management from Senate relative to the passage to the Senate. Oh my God. $64. That's ridiculous. Okay. First of all, in case you guys didn't know, Lyndon Johnson was president from 1963 to 1969. So the fact that he has written this biography and he's gotten to 1964. He's covered like a year to 2 years of his presidency of the nearly 6 years that Johnson was president. Oh my God. Ridiculous. So many parallels to George here. But at least he's like somewhat steadily, I mean, he's due. The book is due because he was writing one every like 10 years. But the fact that like, oh my God, that he's like, oh, I've got 1,000 pages. He's got 1,000 fucking pages, and I'm only on the passage of Medicaid and Medicare. Oh my God. Let me see here. History. First attempt to Congress, 1963. Here we go. Johnson signed the Social Security amendments in 1965. Oh, man. Incredible. Incredible. So he is stuck. Oh my God, this is hilarious. So he's literally, oh my God, this is fucking hilarious. So keep in mind, Lyndon Johnson, president in 1963. The last book is ended in 1964. Medicare is passed in 1965. He's 1,000 pages in, and he's gotten to 1965, which is where he's stuck. He's still writing about the passage of Medicare. And he's supposed to make it to the end of the fucking Johnson presidency? No, he's not. Fuck. Man, though, I mean, Lyndon Johnson, man. Lyndon Johnson was 100% the greatest domestic president, man. Oh my God, the things he got done. I mean, maybe FDR and Lyndon Johnson, greatest domestic presidents. Like, oh, the things he got passed, incredible things that he did for people, man. I mean, you know, I have to say domestic because fucking Vietnam. that's a big fucking mistake. But like, oh my God. Oh, it's just hilarious. Oh my God, Caro. So Robert Caro is currently, oh no. He's 90 years old. No, this motherfucker's not finishing. He's totally not finishing. I think what's funny is when I first heard about these books like 25 years ago, I was in graduate school and somebody told me about them. And I remember people being like, no, there's no way the guy's finishing. like at that time. And that was before the fourth. I think that came out. I think the reason I'd heard about it is because Master of the Senate had come out in 2002. I went to grad school from 01 to 03. And so I'd heard about it because Master of the Senate had just come out. And that was book 3. So we actually did a book 4. Oh my God. So ridiculous. 90 years old. There's no way he's fucking finishing. He clarified he will not allow someone else to finish his work, and he will release whatever he's completed to the public if he passes away. Ridiculous. Preston, you're wise. How do I overcome something that made me feel so unhappy that now life seems empty and suffocating? Like, will there be no joy ever again? Also, shout out to Brazil. Please love your channel. Brazil, what? The I mean, it's tough. It's tough to know, like with it's tough to explain everything because obviously you give me something very abstract. But what I'll tell you is that, um, you know, for the most part, human feelings. Well, one, I'll say that like humans are remarkably resilient. They're remarkably resilient. Sometimes I think about horrible things, like what if one of my children dies, right? Like I think of like the most horrific thought in my head. Okay. And I'm just like, and I kind of am like, I would never get over that. And it would just be over for me. Like I would just be, I would just like shut down. That's the feeling I have. However, when you actually look at people who have lost children, yeah, it's traumatic. It takes a long time to get over it, but they get over it. And they move on. Human beings are remarkably resilient. Remarkably resilient. You know, these movies where some event happens and then 20 years later people are still reeling from that event. That's not the world. For the most part, like the human organism is meant to, it like figures out a way. Whether it's delusion and cope and all of those things, this is why copium comes in here, because people have ways to cope. People find ways. And so when I hear that like something that you found something that made you really happy and now it's empty and suffocating, like maybe that's a relationship or something that with somebody. Like I know that everything seems bad, but you'll somehow, in a general sense, work it out. I don't know if it means like ending some relationship and moving on, working through that relationship, figuring it out. But in general, I think that you will feel joy again. Like you will find a way. That's the way human beings are. Like they don't just shut down for the rest of their lives. They find a way. Life finds a way. Life finds a way, like the frogs in Jurassic Park. But I'm just saying, logically speaking, like I understand, like I've definitely been in situations where I was incredibly unhappy after some loss or some breakup. I mean, obviously there's things that just like traumatized me for way too long. Like, you know, taking a better part of a year to get over something. But you do get over it. You do move on. You do find new joys. Life is very interesting and richer than I ever thought. And every year I realize it's richer than I ever thought. And my life is more interesting than I ever thought it would be. And so I think that's like, I understand that everything is very painful now, but logically speaking, you'll move on. You'll be happy again. Like, have you ever met a human being where something happened and then they were never happy again? Well, I mean, I'm not talking like they're unhappy and then they die. Like I'm talking like 10 years goes by and and they're still caught up over this like event. No, like people move on and they deal. And you will too. You will too. You know. That's just how organisms are, you know. Just like take a step back and be like, well, is it realistic that I'm never going to feel happiness again? Is that realistic? I mean, come on. Is it realistic that a human being would stop feeling happiness? No. Like if somebody told you that story, like from another perspective, like, oh, and then he just stopped being happy because of some event. Be like, no, well, what do you mean? He never ate a good tasting steak ever again? He never saw sunrise again? He never had a really good night's sleep ever again. You know, it'll happen. It'll be fine. Oh, how will Nymeria die, and how will Arya take it? Well, I have my ideas in the fanfic. I don't know if you're asking that, but Arya. I mean, obviously Arya would if Nymeria died, like it would be traumatic for her, and she'd just fucking go nuts and crazy about it. Now in the show, Nymeria didn't die; she just went off, right? Which is weird. Like, wouldn't you continue to have wolf dreams the rest of your life? Because we know she has wolf dreams from across the Narrow Sea. So she's just like, oh, that's not you. And Nymeria just goes off and we never see her again. Like, but yeah, I think, I think it's very likely that some knight or some will just fucking kill Nymeria. Like that some you got enough guys, you got enough warriors walking around the Riverlands, which is going to be the center of attention for the plot. Eventually some people are just going to be like, no, let's just fucking kill these fucking wolves, how's Aegon getting dragons? Could Dance of the Dragons end in peace? No, it's not. I don't think it's going to be ending in peace. I mean, that would be interesting and all. Or even, I mean, I guess there's a chance that it could end in truce and then resume once the others get killed, kind of like in the show. But I think the idea is that everything leads to tragedy. But how Aegon getting a dragon? I mean, I think that realistically, we look at the state of the dragons. You don't have 3 dragons if you're just going to be using them all together in concert. That's the point is you're going to split them up. And so, either Quentin is alive and he's going to bring a dragon back, or Victarion captures a dragon with Chekhov's bacon and brings it back. And one of those dragons Aegon gets a hold of. Whether he's the rider, maybe is a question. I don't know if he would be the rider, but he's going to get a hold of a dragon and it's going to go back, So either Victarion or Quentin is going to bring a dragon to him at some point. How loud is the gecko? The gecko is fucking loud. It's pretty loud. Okay. If Sarah's a Blackfyre, is that public knowledge? It's funny how considering how close the cities of the Narrow Sea are, there should be a lot more trade, people traveling back and forth, and people should be talking about the politics of the free cities a lot more, but they don't. Westeros is super insular, ridiculously insular. That people are talking about events in the north and on the wall and stuff like that, but no one's talking about anything like around the Narrow Sea. Like when Randa takes Sansa down the mountain and she gives the summary of everything that's happening in Westeros, right? You know, she's not saying shit like, oh, and there's an election in Volantis. Like, oh, you don't want to mention that? Oh, the Sea Lord of Bravos is ill. Like, none of that is like coming up. You know, it should. It's not very far. Certainly not Bravos on the Vale. Well, the Sea Lord of Bravos is ill. You know, like that should come up. But yeah, it just doesn't. I think that at the same time, like for that same reason that mysteriously the lives of the free cities just aren't on people's radar, it's certainly possible that the elites of the free cities know all about the Blackfyres and Sarah and all of this stuff, and it just isn't communicated to Westeros for no reason, you know. You know, that it's completely public knowledge in the free cities, but not in Westeros at all, you know. But yeah, but I don't know. I mean, is Blackfyre? I don't think it's. But are the Blackfyres that famous? You know, are people thinking like that kind of stuff? Maybe. I'm just trying to think. Like, would I mean by comparison? Okay, doing an analogy here. JFK was president, but do I know who all of the Kennedy offspring are? And do I care? You know, like, do I know what Jimmy Carter's kids are doing? Do I know what Ronald Reagan's kids are doing? Sometimes I hear about it, but for the most part, like, you don't, you know, like, what's Chelsea Clinton's job right now? I don't know. You know, what's, how is Eric? What is Eric Trump doing day to day? I don't know. You know, so it could be that like even though the Blackfyres, like Bittersteel was super important, and Meleys the Monstrous was super important, that everybody's just like, who cares about who cares about these other family members? Like that it just drops off the map, and so it could be like public knowledge. Like, look, what Bill Clinton's brother is doing right now is public knowledge, I suppose, but I don't know what it is. I can look it up, but they don't have the internet there, so I don't know. You know, like there's no internet in Westeros, so public, like it's not a secret, but no one cares, so it becomes unknown because no one cares. I think is the better thing, is that like it's public knowledge, but no one cares probably about her. I think that might be the best explanation of it all. Will Jaime ultimately choose Cersei like in the show? I think so. I think that I think when we're like to George, like the relationships of love and obligation are very important. And if we're talking like I just think about Dying of the Light the whole time, and I'm just like, well, he's got, you know, Jaime's gonna feel a certain obligation, and love conquers all other kind of logic, you know. So I do think that was definitely a plot point from the books that George revealed. I mean, George can change his mind. I mean, obviously Jaime was supposed to be the primary villain in his original outline, and then he changed Jaime's plot to be you know, a redemption story. So it's you know, maybe, you know, he might change things, but no, I think definitely like George was probably like, yeah, no, that's what they're going to do. And it just, I don't know, it just feels very, very Dying of the Light, obligation to exes, obligation to people that you love. Like they may have betrayed me, but that's irrelevant because I'm not going to betray them. You know, they may not keep their word, but I keep my word. You know, that kind of thing. Is it possible Illyrio is using a ruby red glamour to appear much fatter than he is? Like the fat cat, the fat cat in Sirius Pharrell's tale. I mean, there's definitely weirdness about Illyrio. The fact that he like is light on his feet and talks about fucking, even though he's like obviously too fat to fuck. Um, but I mean, so I'm a little split on it because George does this all the time. He's like, oh, like Khal Drogo is this massive dude, but he also moves like a panther. Like inexplicably, you're massively tall and huge and muscular, but you're also like completely stealthy. Like, you know, you're like, those two things don't go together. Like you know, like I've never met an incredibly tall, super muscular dude who was also like stealthy, moving like a panther. Like, so George puts those contradictions in, but but I don't think Illyrio is glamored. I think that might be a little too much magic. I don't think there's necessarily a need for it. You know, what is he getting out of being fat, like looking fat? You know, what's the point of it all? You know, what is the point? I'm going to read his LBJ erotica. Oh my God. It's just hilarious. It's hilarious. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I was a little distraught, depressed a couple weeks ago, and I got some relief watching your season 7 watch. I still laugh at those. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, sometimes I wonder, like, do they hold up? And I go back and you know, it's funny because I laugh. Um, you know, like it's your own humor, so it's like, oh, like laughing at your own jokes makes sense because it's your own humor, right? So I'm like, oh, are those getting good? Did those hold up? And I watch them, I'm like, yeah, these are pretty funny, but of course they're funny to me, like it's my humor, I made it in the first place. So um uh, uh, uh. um would living off the Clinton Foundation, I think you mean grift, but I mean, the Clinton Foundation does a lot of really great HIV work around the world. I mean, there's some really positive stuff it's done, and disaster relief as well. Like it's. I mean, I've seen some of it firsthand. Um, so I don't know about like, you know, I don't know if it's a grift. I mean, Chelsea Clinton, like, she's already inheriting millions of dollars. She doesn't need to like work a grift, right? Like, um, you know, so I'm not sure what the idea here is that somehow, you know, a charity um, is something to like trash. I mean, it's kind of you know, I just I take issue with it. Not to single you out, but I take issue with it in the sense that like USAID was torn apart and hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, have died because of it. Because there's just this like weird belief that like, well, if somebody's doing something charitable. If somebody's doing something good in the world, there must be something bad about it, and therefore it needs to be destroyed. And so Elon Musk destroyed USAID. Um, this horrible, like just this horrible thing that he did. Just atrocious. Like the man. If there were hell, he'd burn in it a million times over for what he did. For what he did. And so it's just like, but they just have this, like, he just had this like weird belief out of nowhere that aid work must be evil in some way. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't. It's a charity that it's a charity that helps people. Like why does it need to be trashed? I'm just Cal Drogo equals Lamar Jackson confirmed. That's funny. I mean, I suppose some of the I mean, I guess you're right that if there's one person that moves like a panther who's huge and tall, it'd be a football player. I guess I haven't met many professional football players in my life. Okay. And finally, if Jamie's story is redemption, then why is he not seeking forgiveness from Kevin, Gemma, and Devin? They are lost people to the war started by Jamie. Well, I don't know if Jamie is quite there yet. Like, it's still a journey. Keep in mind, at this point, Jamie still thinks everything he did was completely justified. I mean, not everything. I think he probably feels guilty about maybe pushing Bran from a window, but they're still in that realm of oh, I needed to protect Cersei and our love, and I was the Cersei and Jamie love. He's unapologetic about that. He's unapologetic about their relationship. So Jamie's still quite a bit of a contradiction, but he's trying to get there in a micro sense. He's trying to do something in a micro, saving Sansa in a micro sense is this one good deed that'll somehow make up for all the bad deeds he's done or something. But I agree with you that, especially Gemma and Devin, is that there's nothing wrong with that. They're good characters. They're good people. Why are they, all this war was started by them and people around them. But, all of that's, I mean, I agree with you, but he thinks he should do, but he's not quite there yet. I think he's not there yet. Predictions for Iran after Khomeini's death. Does a successor take over? Or IRGC takes more power? Secular Iran with Shah, long shot, come true? No, I mean, I think the Khomeini, the Ayatollah, has a lot of power, and you're the Grand Ayatollah. There's lots of Ayatollahs in the world, but the Grand Ayatollah, I think that office of the Grand Ayatollah has a lot of power, and so I mean, a successor, yes, I think a successor would take over, but the idea that all of a sudden people would move in and push for a secular Iran or something like that. It presupposes, see, if this were something like a more tribal society that's built around a cult of personality, then the removal of that personality can bring a lot of change. But I mean, the office of the Grand Ayatollah has been around for a while, and people are pretty loyal to that office, and they don't necessarily know how to function outside of that. So I don't think that I don't personally, see much changing in Iran anytime soon. So, but we can all dream. We can all dream, but I don't see that. I don't see that happening. They've now educated. They've now educated, maleducated, 2 generations of people in religious thinking. You don't like walk away from that unscathed, like, destruction. Like, and you keep in mind, like I lived in Sunni Arab Middle East, but you got to understand that, like, there's so much lost. Like, it takes so long to re-educate a population. Like, the most educated people I knew in Jordan and Egypt, like, didn't believe in evolution. Like, the most educated liberal people, because they just came from a school system that was like, no, what are you talking about? Like, God made it. God made everybody. And you're like, oh God, like that, like how far behind these countries are in science is just insane. And so to all of a sudden, like, want a secular system when they've been raised, like, the language is all built around, like, religion as well. Like, it's hard to even, like, their word for thank you is religious. Like, when you say, like, oh, God, everything is like, God bless your hand. Oh, with God's peace, like, everything is religious. Every aspect of the language in your day, it's so hard to undo that. It takes so long. It just doesn't have, it would take something, incredibly, take one of these, like, violent communist revolutions or something to erase it all. So, do Americans realize that CDC, NOAA, and NASA are the envy of the world? I mean, some Americans, but it's really sad. No, I mean, I agree with you that it's really sad that all of these things are getting destroyed. Not to mention, I mean, NIH too, just getting gutted. It's rough. All right, last super chat, and then I get to go to bed. Beautiful New Mexico cinematography. Lead is an author and there's a blended hive mind consciousness. Do you think George R. Martin is liking Pluribus? LOL. It's really, like, I do want, so George was very, very bitter about Sliders. Very bitter about Sliders. Because he felt that, like, it was a show that was stealing his idea. Now, George doesn't have another show competing with it, but it's very clearly Song for Leah. Like, and it's in Albuquerque and he's in fucking Santa Fe. Like, he is just so close to it. It would be very hard for him to watch and be like, oh my God, how, like, I mean, I watch it and I'm just like, it seems like somebody read George R. R. Martin's work and is copying it. Like, it does seem that way. And because I'm saying, like, not just the general plot, the themes are all there. Like the religious themes, like as the hive mind being a stand-in for heaven and stuff. So it's not like hive minds are in other places. I talked about this with Carmine. Like, hive minds are in other places in fiction. Like, there's the Borg. But, like, at no point are the Borg ever thematically presented as heaven. It's just, they're just a hive-minded collection. They're never presented as a religion. Like, it is, Pluribus is, it's not only a song for Leah's plot, but it's a song for Leah's themes. And it's right in fucking New Mexico, right? Like it's crazy. It's like I do wonder if somebody was reading George R. R. Martin's stuff, but it's well done. It's very well done, and I'm watching. He should. I mean, he should definitely. Like, I feel like there should be a blog post where he's like, "Was watching Pluribus. This is very similar to a story I did." Like, it's very similar to a story you did, George. Yes. Yes. Oh, man. Yeah. So, anyway, spoiling the podcast. I know. I know. I know. Anyway, thank you everyone for being with me tonight. I don't know if I'll be here next week, but I'll see you in 2 weeks at least. And because going to the beach, Thanksgiving weekend. So I don't think I'll see you guys next week, but a week after. So anyway, thank you everybody. Appreciate you guys, and I'll talk to you guys soon.